call this meeting to order. Please take the roll.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. The plan before this afternoon was to just plow through all these bills, no matter how long it took tonight to get it done, to finish the docket. But since then, we've had some agreement between our caucuses, and readings will be waived, so I expect we're going to have another meeting next Monday. The bills are basically grouped in three parts. One group is a bunch of bills that have to go to the Senate Finance Committee. Those are bills that by members of this committee and non-members. Those bills are going to go first. Next are going to go bills patroned by non-committee members. And then there's another pile of bills that are patroned by committee members that don't have to go to this committee, and they're going to go last. And the plan tonight, this afternoon, will be to get through the bills that have to go to Senate Finance, and that's about 11 bills, it looks like, and to get into the bills, try to get the bills finished that came from non-committee members, and then to get into the other members' bills as quickly as we can. So, and forgive me, because if you are on the sign up, if you've signed up, you are not necessarily going to get called according to your sign up, but Senator Sturtevant, you're first on the list anyway, so come on. Senate Bill 735, please turn your attention to Senator Sturtevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 735 deals with direct primary care. This is not concierge medicine. These are primary care providers who contract with individuals, oftentimes who don't have health insurance, to provide them with primary care services for a monthly fee. It's an affordable alternative way for folks to get health care. And what this bill would do, Mr. Chairman, which has been done in some other states, and I've got an expert witness who specializes in this if you have any specific questions, it would allow these folks who go to direct primary care to get referrals to specialists, and they wouldn't be prevented from getting those referrals by the health care.
So direct primary care, you mean physicians that don't take insurance?
Correct.
And they can refer to a specialist that would be covered. Well, the one concern I've got is that there might be some cost-sharing implications that might require the bill to go to HERC. But first, I'd like to see if any of the members of this committee have questions for Senator Sturtevant. Are there any questions? Well, then I'd like 3 minutes on each side. 3 minutes for, 3 minutes against.
Go ahead. All right. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Dr. Kenneth Q. I'm speaking in favor of Bill SB 735 from Midlothian. I'm a family physician who runs a direct primary care practice. I'm here representing myself and many of my direct primary care colleagues across the state who would love to join but couldn't take time out from patient care this afternoon. As Senator Sturtevant mentioned, direct primary care is a model that is focused on access to care for everybody. And we do not participate with any insurance carriers and instead receive payments directly from our patients. In accordance with Virginia law, all of our members sign a membership agreement which establishes the relationship and also recommends that they have some form of health insurance. And so some of our patients have a closed network HMO, which they often don't know the implications of having one. And it's on behalf of these patients that I'm here in support of SB 735. This bill does not protect our model, nor does it benefit our practices in any way. It seeks to relieve some pressure off an overburdened primary care system, as well as to help our patients out. Patients like those in Charlottesville who are waiting 4 to 6 extra months to establish the primary care just to get a referral. Patients everywhere from Alexandria to Lynchburg, from Newport News to here in Richmond, who maintain space on another doctor's panel simply to get the referrals they need. And this is in the setting of a projected shortage of about over 1,600 primary care providers by 2030, of which Virginia is above the national average in terms of the shortage. I've encountered patient visits which are purely administrative. They're frustrating for physicians. They take time from patients, and they act as an extra barrier, especially for those who are more vulnerable, including those who have transportation difficulties to get to an extra visit. This bill will help our patients access the care they need while also reducing some redundancy and waste in the system. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for your consideration and help in ensuring a caring and equitable healthcare system in our Commonwealth.
Thank you. Are there others in the room who would like to speak in favor of this bill? Are there people online that would like to speak in favor of this bill? Okay. Well, then start again. 3 minutes for anybody that's opposed to this bill. For everybody. For everybody that's opposed. That's right.
Hello, I'm Heidi Dix with the Virginia Association of Health Plans. This legislation would undo our health plans' abilities to maintain our networks. The networks are key to really keeping costs and premiums down, and it really hinders our ability to direct enrollees to the most cost-effective care. Overall, this will increase our costs and our premiums, and it's definitely not going to lead to better patient outcomes.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris West with Kaiser Permanente. We're the nation's largest integrated healthcare delivery system and arguably the largest HMO in this country. We underwrite insurance and provide healthcare services to about 300,000 Virginians. We're opposed to this bill because it does establish a new mandate where HMOs have to recognize out-of-network providers when that referral goes out to them. Those direct primary care doctors, the way an HMO is set up is for the patient to have an established relationship through that tight network that the insurance company manages and maintains because it provides quality outcomes and drives affordable services. And so this would recognize that direct primary care doctor that doesn't have a relationship with us. They've chosen not to accept insurance. They have no way to transmit that referral to us to keep on hand, and it would require us to then recognize out-of-network specialists or providers that direct primary care provider may refer out. That goes counterintuitive to the whole model of what an HMO is set up to do. Individuals who sign up for these plans are informed about that. When you look at we're required both by the ACA and the Virginia Bureau of Insurance to produce a summary of benefits and coverage. On the front page of that, it does list out whether individuals would need to get a referral to see a specialist for services or not. So they know that coming into it. And a lot of people choose HMOs because of the quality reduces out-of-pocket expenses and drives to affordable care. So thank you.
Your perspective, though, is that the mandate of providing an I guess somebody who's not in your plan would result in transfer of cost and potentially a new mandate that would probably ought to be looked at by the HERC.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Are there? Is there anybody else? Is there anybody online that's opposed to this bill? Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Mr. Chair, hang.
Senator Obenshain.
Are the health plans here?
The health.
Be interested in knowing.
I think Heidi spoke first.
Oh, for the health plans, of course you did. Never mind. Thank you.
She spoke first in opposition.
I was looking for Doug.
Yeah.
So memorable.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Surville.
I got a question for council. Council, is this normally the kind of bill that we refer to HERC?
Mr. Chair, Senator Serval, yes, sir. The HERC Section 30-343 requires bills containing mandated insurance benefits or providers to go to HERC first. The definition of health benefit includes those that place limitations on cost sharing, which this bill does.
Does that answer your question, Senator Surville?
I think so.
Okay. Was there a motion?
I had a motion to report.
Okay, if the motion's report, it has to be reported and referred to finance. Okay? Is there a second on that? Okay, there's a motion and a second to report and re-refer to finance.
Substitute motion,
There's a
carry over, the Senator Hurt.
A substitute motion, carry over and send it to the HERC. And that's been seconded. So the substitute motion is what we'll vote on first. All in favor of carrying over and referring to HERC, vote aye. Open the roll, please.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay, thank you, Senator
Thank you, Mr.
Serta.
Chairman.
Okay, Senator Salim has a bill, and he's also high on the list. So Senator Head has a bill too. Senator Head, my understanding is 148 was going to be rolled into 331. Is that or 339? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I
to,
so move.
okay, this will be a recorded vote to roll 148 into 339. Okay, it's there. Okay, Senate Bill 339 is before you, and turn your attention to, and Senator Head's now listed as chief co-patron. Now turn your attention to Senator Salim and Senator Head if he's going to stick around.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a substitute that was sent out, so I just want to make sure you all had that.
Okay, substitute for 339. It doesn't relate to the. Okay, this is a substitute for 339. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Okay, the one thing this doesn't reflect is that we've rolled 148 into it, but we're going to pretend that's what we did. We're going to pretend that it does. And you want to describe the bill?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this SB 339, the digital asset mining bill, is essentially a definitions bill where the bill does define what digital assets are, what mining is in terms of that new digital space. This specific bill exempts any person engaging in home digital asset mining or digital asset mining business activity, as those terms are defined in this bill, from the requirement to obtain a money transmitter license. It also sort of details out how this new industry could be taxed at what capacity. The bill also has towards the end, includes a portion that directs the Bureau of Financial Institution of the State Corporation Commission to convene a work group for the purpose of studying and making recommendations related to blockchain technology, digital asset mining, and cryptocurrency activity in the Commonwealth. The purpose of this bill is to provide basic guidelines for how digital asset mining can occur in the Commonwealth. That is an industry that we have not looked at putting in any type of regulations without understanding what it is. So that's what this specific bill does, is it incorporates several studies in there.
If I can ask you, Senator, in the second enactment clause of the old bill and also in the new substitute, you have a study that's done by the Bureau of Financial Institutions. How is this? I mean, why do we need to do a second study? You've created some kind of blockchain commission to study this.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. In this specific one, we do say if the study is conducted by the Bureau of Financial Institution of the State Corporation Commission, that they sent that study to the commission pending that commission does get formed and fully utilized. So this would not be twice the work. It's just the commission would not have the opportunity.
Okay,
and I can refer to council for
would your idea be that both studies would go forward?
So the commission, which was a separate bill that does not have a study bill, that leaves it up to the commission to determine what they would be doing. SB 339 does have the study portion to conduct a study under the SEC, under the Bureau of Financial Institutions. If the SEC does do the study, it would be referred or sent to the Blockchain Commission, pending that the commission is in full swing.
Mr. Chairman.
Are there, Senator McDougal?
Can you, looking at lines 60 through 64, I guess it gives me some concern that we're saying that there can be no noise ordinances in industrial areas. I mean, I know we've heard a lot of complaints on this committee about noise from data centers. Why are we saying that localities can't make that a part of a zoning option?
Mr. Chairman and Senator McDougal, for clarification, which are you referring to?
Lines 60 through 64, Mr. Chairman, where it says no locality shall prohibit digital mining. It says no local ordinance shall regulate the sound of a digital asset mining business in an industrial zoned area.
So we included, and I do have some folks that are here to testify if they're able to answer this as well. For this purposes, a lot of these regulations and a lot of these rules against in the digital mining industry have not been implemented. We wanted to make sure this bill does not prohibit a lot of the acts without figuring out what digital mining, asset mining, and what that's going to do in terms of the local industry, along with the environment and all that. That is the reason that's in there, along with the fact that a lot of localities don't have, they may have noise ordinances, but it's not specific to this industry.
For Senator Salim. Okay, 3 minutes aside, are the people in favor of this legislation? Yes, sir. Please identify yourself, where you're from, and
Hi, my name is Eric Peterson. I am the Policy Director for Satoshi Action Fund. We are a state-based advocacy and educational organization on behalf of digital assets. Let me say, to start with, Virginia, nearly 20% of Virginians own some kind of digital asset. Well, also last year, Virginia mined 3,000 Bitcoin, equivalent to $150 million worth of value. As Senator Salim definitely said, this legislation is level setting. It's called the Blockchain Basics Act because it sets out key provisions for how the state should treat digital assets and digital asset businesses going forward. Overall, the bill does four things. One, it creates definitions for technologies like digital asset, blockchain protocol, node, and variety of others. Secondly, it protects the ability of Virginians to hold and use digital assets as a method of payment, providing a $200 de minimis exemption, which is the same as it is for foreign currency from capital gains when used as a method of payment. Without this exemption, it would be impossible to use digital assets and report with and comply with tax ordinances. To the previous senator's question, it does balance local concerns about noise with the digital asset mining industry that exists in Virginia right now. The bill prohibits specifically discriminatory policies against digital asset mining, but digital asset mining must comply to all existing noise ordinances or other general noise ordinances. For example, you could set the noise for an area in which a digital asset mine exists and would have to meet those ones. You could not set a specific one for that. Finally, the legislation just exempts blockchain technology with a few other traditional financial regulations that they could not comply with, allowing these businesses to grow in the state of Virginia. Thank you so much for your time.
okay, thank you, sir. Next.
Good afternoon,
You got less
Chairman.
than a minute.
Greg Leffel, Virginia Blockchain Council. I'll be brief. This is not a data center bill. 19% of Virginians own digital assets. That's a lot of Virginians that absolutely care about this technology and what it can do for Virginia. Thank you. We ask you for your support.
Hello, my name is George Munden. I'm a local Richmonder, part of the Virginia Blockchain Council, but I'm also a small business owner, and I am for this bill. I have customers that have inquired, several of them, about the ability to be able to utilize digital assets as payments in my business. So I am for this, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you for your time.
Okay, are there people that are, were there people online for this? Okay, are there people that are opposed to this bill? Same 3 minutes, reset the clock.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to stress to Rob Bohannon on behalf of the Virginia Bar Association, we have no position on the substitute at the time. The business law section is reviewing it. We had flagged this with the first bill that was filed, but wanted to share two concerns that did come up. The digital assets that are contemplated in this bill, cryptocurrency, non-fungible tokens, they're expressly declared not to be financial investments, and therefore they're not required to be registered as securities with the SEC. And the other issue is the bill exempts parties engaged in digital asset mining and there's business activities associated with it from liability related to specific transactions merely for validating such transactions. However, we have no detail on what is offered in the bill regarding what activity constitutes the validating. So without that kind of detail, the exemption is a little bit murky for us to understand. But again, no position. We're still reviewing the bill.
Thank you. Julie Bolthouse with Piedmont Environmental Council. This is a data center bill. There is no limit on the size of the digital asset mining business activity described in the amendment. It says group of computers working together for the purpose of securing a blockchain protocol that consumes more than 1 megawatt of energy. This would take away the abilities of localities to regulate digital asset mining, which is cryptocurrency, in any industrial district. That includes flex industrial, light industrial, in small towns like town of Warrenton, town of Leesburg. All of your towns have zoning. This is a very impactful bill. I also want to point out that digital asset mining is now primarily done by large companies who are able to build out data centers. From Bankrate.com, it says, as of January 2023, Bitcoin hash, the likelihood of a solo miner solving a Bitcoin hash was 1 in 26.9 million. This is for large cryptocurrency. Please, if that is not the intent of this bill, then they have not drafted it clearly enough. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Elena Schlossberg. I'm with the Coalition to Protect Prince William County. This is absolutely a data center bill, although it's for crypto mining. This is the concern that we have as a community. Under the bill, no locality's industrial zone may prohibit the use of such area for digital asset mining or digital asset mining business activity. So this is an unintended consequence if you pass this bill. It's like right now you're about to step off a curb and you're not seeing the bus, and we're trying to warn you that this bus, at a time when citizens are outraged over what's happening in their communities, use of power, use of water, this bill cannot move forward with this part in it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next. Got about 20 seconds.
Chris Lamb,
10
Virginia
seconds.
League of Conservation Voters. We share several of the concerns and don't think this is ready for prime time yet. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Senator Saleem, Senator Head, do you all want to wrap it up?
No, thank you again. Again, we are essentially trying to define in an industry that has not been regulated without regulating it strictly. So I hope the committee would consider this, and thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, haven't heard the testimony. We've been talking over here. I mean, this bill has a lot of things that are giving us a lot of heartburn. Number one, taking away locality zoning powers in industrial areas and also even in residential areas. We normally don't we usually don't nuke a locality's entire authority to do that. In addition, the tax provisions that basically put a $200 with a CPI escalator in it for the exempt from cap gains income. We don't have anything that has an automatic escalator for cap gain income in the code that I'm aware of. The value of things goes up and down, things get cheaper or lesser. There's no reason a CPI escalator is appropriate for this. And the last thing, Mr. Chairman, is that I have an allergy to anything that gives blanket immunity or liability to anybody over anything. And so, Mr. Chairman, I think that strikes me that the study part is the good part. And in light of that, I would move to strike basically lines 12 through 328 from the bill, make it a Section 1 bill, and just leave the enactment clause as a standalone study to the BFI to look at this and tell us what they think we ought to do. I think that's probably prudent.
Second. So that would be basically to strike the whole bill except for the second enactment clause.
Right, that's right.
Okay. Does everybody understand that amendment? So strike the substance of the bill and allow the study to go forward.
That's right.
Okay. All in favor of that amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the bill's before the...
Mr. Chairman, move to report and re-refer to finance as amended.
Moved. You may have taken the financial implication out of the bill, but we still we have a letter for it to go to finance, so report and refer to finance. Is there a second on that? Second. Are there substitute motions? Please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next, let's see, Senator Pekarsky. Senate Bill 670.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I'm asking you to support Senate Bill 670 today, which allows any licensed surplus line broker to be exempted from annual taxes, license taxes, penalties, and other costs on any policy of insurance procured by such broker on behalf of the Virginia Railway Express, VRE. The VRE is currently exempt from paying state taxes on any direct purchase that it makes. However, in the case of procuring required surplus lines of insurance, it must make these purchases through a broker rather than making the purchase directly. These surplus line purchases through brokers are currently subject to Virginia state taxes. The cost of these taxes imposed on brokers are then passed on to the VRE. By exempting these insurance policies, the VRE will save approximately $100,000 of taxpayer dollars per year going forward. We've worked with the Virginia Tax Department on the language of this bill, as well as talking with the Secretary of Finance's office, the American Property Casualty Insurance Association, and the Virginia Independent Insurance Agents, and no one had any objections. I urge you to pass this, and I do have somebody here who
Senator,
can answer.
it's pretty specific legislation. Was there a specific broker that asked for this bill, or?
I can pass that on. I do not believe it was a specific broker, but I do have somebody who can speak
You've
more
got somebody, are there
in
second,
detail.
are there questions for Senator Pekarsky? Okay, 3 minutes aside.
Yep.
We'll,
Okay. Are they not here?
maybe you've been abandoned.
I've been abandoned. Yep. I do not see them here right now, so that's what I have. But anyway,
Are there people that are opposed to this bill? Is there anybody online that cares about this bill? Is there anybody in the room that cares about this bill?
I care, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Evan cares.
Yeah, this was a bill that came from the VRE, I believe, and I support it and would move to report it at the appropriate time.
Okay, move to report and refer to finance. You want to just do that? Send it
Yes.
up there and let them worry about it?
Yeah.
You're talking about them like I'm not sitting here.
I'm sorry, Senator.
Oh, that's too funny.
Okay, is that the motion to report and refer to finance?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. Are there other motions? If not, please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, we have to do the finance bills first, Senator Carol Foy. Your bills are further down the list, so we've got a bunch of bills to get to before we can do yours. I'm trying to look for people. Senator Perry, is she out there? Okay. Senator Locke, 118. You can do it from here.
Okay.
Let me ask you, this is the bill that was introduced last year by Senator Boysko, and it's at the HERC, and they've got 2 years to do the work. So that's what I wondered. Why are we, do we have a solution to that? We talked about that the last time.
I don't know about last time. I only know about this time.
Okay.
Okay. Senate, there is a substitute.
Okay.
Substitute.
Second.
Okay, substitute for 118. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Senator Luck,
Okay.
explain the substitute, please.
Okay, Senate Bill 118 will require private insurance plans in Virginia to cover doulas as a mandated provider. Once passed, the bill should be sent to the Health Insurance Reform Commission for consideration. Evidence strongly suggests that the presence of a doula significantly improves birth and postpartum outcomes, mitigating the racial disparities in morbidity and mortality. requiring the private insurance to cover doulas will help reduce racial maternal health outcome disparities, save lives, and reduce medical costs. It is a win for women, insurance companies, and Virginia. If we go to lines 100 through 107 of the bill, are two specific provisions. That the provision of the first enactment of this act shall not become effective unless reenacted by the 2025 session of the General Assembly, and that the Health Insurance Reform Commission shall consider coverage for doula care services provided by a state-certified doula as provided in the first enactment of this act by its 2025 review of the Essential Health Benefits Benchmark Plan, and that the Commission shall include such coverage in its recommendation to the General Assembly for a new Essential Health Benefits Benchmark Plan unless the Commission identifies a compelling reason to exclude the coverage.
Yeah, that probably takes your concern out, doesn't it?
Mr. Chairman, Doug Gray on behalf of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. We support the bill. It has a delayed enactment, so we have a year to get it together on the appropriate regulation. We're in good shape, and I think these folks are in good shape.
So you've got a year for HERC to finish its job, and then it has to be reenacted.
Correct.
Does everybody understand the substitute and understand? Okay, are there people here that feel compelled to say yay or nay on this?
Yay.
Okay. We've probably taken that, the financial implications out, but it still has to go to finance. So move to report and re-refer to finance. It's been a motion. Has it been seconded? Has it been seconded?
Second.
Okay. Are there other motions? If not, open the roll, please.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay. Ayes 15, no zero. Senator Eben, you've got a bill.
Yes. This is
381.
Senate Bill 381, and we worked out a substitute with input from the VEC and from the Virginia Chamber
Move substitute.
and Poverty Law Center.
Okay, we got a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, we've got the substitutes before the committee.
Okay, thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Emmett.
Chairman. Yes, this is a bill that Delegate Lee Ware and I submitted with input, as I said, from the Chamber, the VEC, and legislators on the Commission on Unemployment Compensation was the recommendation of that commission. The bill seeks to set protections for claimants when their former employer is not responsive to the VEC for information about the claimant's case. It sets a penalty for the employer if they're not responsive, clarifies the fact-finding process for the VEC, and states that the VEC's decision needs to be in plain language. That's the genesis of the bill. The amendment delays the enactment until January, giving the VEC and employers more time to make sure that employers' contact information, including those designated for third-party administrators, is updated in the system, gives the VEC more time to ensure that employers are enrolled in their chosen electronic report filing system, and provides consequences to employers who establish a pattern of failing to timely or adequately respond, while both giving employers a series of warnings not present in the original bill and reducing the administrative burden of the pattern requirement as compared to the current law. And there may be people from the
Okay, does everybody on the committee understand the bill and the substitute? Yeah, are there any questions for Senator Eben? Are there those in the audience who would like to speak on this bill? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Flannery O'Rourke, Virginia Poverty Law Center. We're grateful to Senator Eben and to Delegate Ware for their work on this, and also to the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, Virginia Employment Commission, and Legal Aid Justice Center for coming to the table to work out consensus on this bill. With the proposed amendment, it facilitates acquisition of employer reports by placing further onus on VEC to ensure employers are getting the requests. It limits the collateral harms in the form of preventing appeals and overpayments of employers with a pattern of non-response. It ensures claimants get an adequate opportunity to rebut adverse information, which will help prevent the need to appeal because VEC can get to the right decision the first time. And it requires decisions of deputy to state the reason for the decision, which is already required under federal law but not happening in practice.
All those groups came together on the substitute. Is there any opposition to this bill? Okay, a motion will have to be to be reported and referred to finance.
Second.
Okay. Are there other motions? If not, please open the roll. Okay. That's
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, Senator Survey, I want to let you go after Senator Bagby because you only got one bill that has to go to finance. That's 543.
On me, huh?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, SB 543 is a piece of legislation. Well, the current law states that the mobile crisis response services and support stabilization services in a residential crisis stabilization unit for individuals in acute mental health crisis are considered mandated benefits effective January 1, 2024. The bill amends the law by defining behavioral health emergency services and emergency services which protect individuals from balance billing and a couple of other things.
Okay, I think we got it. Does anybody
stop.
oppose this bill?
Substitute.
There's substitute.
Move the
substitute. Okay, all in favor of the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, what's the substitute do that's different from what you described? He just described the substitute?
Oh, yeah, I was describing the
Okay.
substitute. I'm sorry.
Appropriate motion would be to report and refer to finance. Is there anybody in the audience that's opposed to the substitute? Okay, we've got a motion to report and refer to finance. Please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. The bill is reported. Okay, Senator Marston's got a bill, and then Senator Surville's got a couple of bills. Senator Marston's got 713, which is not a...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Senate Bill 713 deals with broadcast broadband. Okay, we have a substitute, and we also have an amendment.
The nature of a substitute, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the substitute, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's for the committee.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we also have a line amendment that will sunset this bill if passed for after 5 years.
Okay, where would the line amendment go? It would go on the substitute?
Yes, it would fit onto the substitute. Is that correct, Mr. Stevens? Yes.
234.
Online 234.
Expire July 1, 2029.
Okay, Senator Marston's moved the amendment. Senator Obenshain seconds it. All in favor of that amendment on 234 expires July 1, 2029. Is that right? Is it July 1, 2029?
5 year. 5 year.
Okay. Okay.
Is it on 234?
State Corporation Commission would like a copy of the substitute.
Okay, all in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's for you with a 5-year sunset. Senator Marston.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, Virginia's been a national leader in broadband, and we all understand the imperative of making sure every Virginian has access to the internet. And I brought this bill to make sure that this bipartisan objective is achieved and universal broadband is achieved. Over the past 5 years, Virginia has invested about $1 billion in broadband expansion. Of that amount, $750 million is one-time federal ARPA dollars that must be spent by 2026 or be clawed back by the federal government. Nobody wants that to happen. If you look at the data and what's happening with projects that are underway, it is obvious that the number one impediment to broadband deployment in the Commonwealth is what's called Make Ready. That is the process that broadband companies and pole owners go through to make sure that fiber optic cables can be attached to utility poles. Within Make Ready, there are two main issues. How long does the work take? And the second is cost. What costs are caused by broadband, and what costs are related to maintaining and upgrading the electric grid? On both of these issues, the investor-owned utilities, Dominion and AEP, are subject to clear federal standards and by the Federal Communications Commission. In many of the areas in Virginia where broadband is not available, electricity is provided by one of 13 electric cooperatives. Today, there are not consistent standards for make-ready on cooperative poles. There are 13 different cooperatives with 13 different sets of standards. They have discretion to determine how long they have to do the work and the price that they want to charge for make-ready. I want to be clear. Most electric cooperatives are exercising their discretion fairly and are supporting the effort to achieve universal broadband while benefiting from some upgrades to their electric networks in the process. In typical areas, the cost per mile of make-ready is somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. That is reasonable and customary today. Today, though, however, a very few pole owners are charging $30,000 to $50,000 per mile. Because there are not clear standards on cost allocation that apply to all these utilities, if there are disagreements between a broadband company and a cooperative, there is no neutral arbiter. If there isn't a mechanism to make sure that the make-ready charges imposed by utilities are reasonable, broadband projects will run out of funding before they can extend broadband to every Virginian. Without a fix, projects will go underground instead of on the utility poles, meaning less poles will be replaced and less work will be available for union electric linemen. You have heard the bill shifts costs to cooperatives. It does not. It establishes a standard and empowers the SCC, not the FCC, the SCC, because the FCC has been put into state code to resolve disputes in a timely and fair manner, and that is what this bill does. Just to very quickly review what the substitute does, the bill takes federal standards that apply to investor-owned utilities and right-sizes them for electric cooperatives. The bill addresses timelines, procedures to accommodate the work, and copies the FCC's cost principles verbatim. The major change in the substitute was that overlashing was completely removed from the bill. This was done in response from concerns of the pole owners and unions about safety. This is where you intertwine one wire around another. Letting the SEC referee this thing is critical. The SEC will consider the interests of electric cooperatives and the public overall. And that is, excuse me, and I just have some concluding remarks, but that's what the bill and the substitute do. What's going to happen, Mr. Chairman, if we don't get this bill through, the attachers will have no option but to go underground, which is very much more expensive, and they're going to run out of money before they get to everybody who needs broadband in Virginia. So we've got to get this thing to the SEC. We've been working on this for years to get the SEC to be the arbiter of all kinds of these service deliveries for electricity and broadband, and we need to get it to the FCC so that they can control this and we can get this done.
Okay, you said the overlashing is out of the bill?
It is out of the bill.
Okay, are there questions for Senator Marston? Okay, there are 3 minutes aside for people that are opposed, are in favor of the bill first. People that are in favor of the bill, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Ray Lemura, President of the Broadband Association of Virginia. We support this legislation. We need rules for the road. In December, the Federal Communications Commission met and they set rules for the road for investor-owned utilities. We don't have those standards in Virginia. The American Rescue Plan and BEAD have a shot clock and clawback, and these are real, and the clock is ticking. The bill specifically carves out the interests and notes the interests of electric cooperative members. We also define the need for broadband deployment and also the public interest. We also have council present if you have specific questions about the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jimmy Carr. I'm the CEO of All Points Broadband. We are a Virginia-based company, currently building more than 20 miles a week of fiber in Virginia. This year alone, we'll spend more than $100 million building broadband. In the last 12 months, All Points has paid for all required make-ready in excess of 26,000 poles, representing 1,300 miles of broadband across 12 Virginia counties. As of today, we have another 29,800 poles or 1,500 miles of poles worth of attachment applications pending. We know a lot about poles. We are also the stewards of the state and local and federal tax dollars that are co-invested in our projects. And when we see virtually all pole owners charging at a certain level and another pole owner right next door, whose poles are the same height, age, and condition, who's asking 2 or 3 times. We know that we're asking to pay for costs that we did not cause. Broadband attachers are willing to and expect to pay the cost that we cause. This bill would create a neutral standard and a neutral arbiter so that disputes can be refereed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the witness.
Senator Stanley's got a question.
I'm looking at the VATI dashboard here, and it looks like you've received about $186.5 million, if my math is right, in VATI grants for 9 projects. Is that about right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and from what I see here, a couple of them have expired non-compliant, but out of those 9 projects, maybe 2 have had anybody receive broadband. Of those 2, only 2 projects have had homes receive broadband connections, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
And you're saying, so after receiving $186 million, 9 projects, only 2 have gotten anywhere in the ground. You have 7 outstanding with 0% completed, and that's all because of pole attachments. It's 100%, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
So your failure of 7 and 9 here is 100% based on pole attachments. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I would say that all of our projects are based on a timeline, and all of those timelines we have worked with the relevant pole owner to establish a standard for how many poles will be made ready. And on what cadence. I believe most of the projects that you were referring to there, we have agreements with all pole owners, 2 in particular, about how many poles will be made ready in every single month. With the first pole owner in the projects that you're referring to, we had an agreement to reach 1,250 poles a month made ready by last June. We began fielding those poles in February of last year. We got a standard to field on in March of last year, and then in June of last year, the standard was changed. And so, yes, in that case, we did lose several months of work. Given the volume of work that's going on in Virginia today, pole attachment work, which is probably 10 times what it was 2 or 3 years ago and will double again in the next year, make ready is the primary issue. We cannot build until poles are made ready for us to attach to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think they've just bitten off more than they can chew, but I appreciate his attempt at an answer.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servo.
I had a question for all points. So the VATI money that you were just talking about that Senator Stanley was focused on, that's money that came out of the ARPA program, that we allocated under, I think, Governor Northam's budget into $800 million into broadband, right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Senator.
Okay, further question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servo.
So under federal rules, if we don't pass this bill and you all are stuck with the costs that you're otherwise required to bear because you can't work this out, and this ends up costing you all a lot more to put the wires on these poles, how will you all end up doing broadband? Will you do it above ground or will you do it below ground?
So we are obligated to spend the dollars that we accept in our VATI contract. So we will spend all of our private investment in those projects. If the cost per mile for some miles goes up dramatically, we will not be able to build as many miles.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servo.
So in other words, you're saying that you will not be able to build as many miles. In other words, you will not be able to build to all the homes at the end of the mile, which means not everybody will be served, correct?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, final question.
Senator Servo.
And with the excess money that we're getting under the BEAD program, this extra federal money that's showing up, isn't it accurate to say that you're not allowed to spend BEAD money program on projects that were supposed to be funded under ARPA money? Is that accurate?
Yes, Senator, it's correct that a project that had a federal dollar on it as of November 30th of last year is not eligible to be covered in a BEAD project.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Next, please.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Richard Schulman. I'm with the Virginia Broadband Industry Association. I represent about a dozen small to medium-sized, mostly rural broadband providers. Many are what you'd call the traditional phone providers. This make-ready issue is an issue for many of our members, and some of them are here today. My point is that as much as this has been an issue up to now, this issue is going to be dramatically worse when $1.48 billion in BEAD money drops in. We think we can't put this decision off any longer, and we'd ask that you act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, Derek Kelly with Lumos. Our roots in Virginia date back more than 100 years offering telephone service. We've been building fiber broadband for nearly 20 years in Botetourt County, Allegheny County, Waynesboro area, Augusta County, Bedford, Campbell, as well as Hampton Roads, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Heidi Cook. Yes, Heidi Cook on behalf of the Wireless Infrastructure Association, and we support the bill.
Missy Wesolowski, representing the Virginia Telehealth Network.
Mr. Chairman, Charlie Jackson, on behalf of Crown Castle, we support the bill.
Eldon James on behalf of Fauquier County, and we support the bill.
There was one person online, and turn your camera on. You just identify yourself. Tell us whether you're for or against it, and whether you represent a group or not. We're out of time.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Nick Surface, CEO of the Richmond Technology Council. We represent over 200 tech companies here in the greater Richmond area, and we support the bill.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there people that are opposed to this? You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Casey Logan with the Virginia Rural Broadband Association. We oppose this bill because, frankly, if this legislation were passed, the entire VATI process would be undermined, and all of their hard work to ensure fairness across the Commonwealth would fall by the wayside. Many ISPs bid on these projects and accurately estimated the cost of make-ready construction and other costs that are not asking for a bailout from the ratepayers. Similarly, many ISPs may have lost VATI awards because they accurately estimated the cost of make-ready constructions, while others, we have heard from today, underbid these projects and are hoping for a bailout from the state. What will happen if the integrity of the VATI application system, if entities who underbid projects and also using this to run to the General Assembly to ask for subsidized funding from electric ratepayers? VATI has a process to deal with companies that cannot meet their contractual obligations. Changing the rules that everyone applied for isn't fair to the other applicants that they had over 2 years ago. We ask that you vote no on this bill.
Time of the people behind you, okay?
Yes, sir. Neil Gray with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Labor Union. We have the greatest respect for the patrons of this legislation and fully support their goal of deploying rural broadband. Despite the efforts of the parties negotiating the language of the bill, the IBEW must oppose this measure in its current form. As written, the bill would unfairly benefit for-profit companies backed by investors at the expense of nonprofit electric utility cooperatives and their ratepayers, many of whom are the members of the IBEW that brave dangerous working conditions to keep the lights on during some of Virginia's worst storms and inclement weather. Our members' jobs are tied directly to the financial health of the electric cooperative employers, and this bill jeopardizes their jobs with the unfunded mandates on rural Virginia. It should be noted that many rural broadband projects have already been completed without this legislation, with internet service providers negotiating directly with electric cooperatives.
Please be respectful of everybody else's time.
We ask that you oppose this bill.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Next. We've got 45 seconds left for everybody.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Jacob Newton on behalf of Virginia's electric cooperatives, to respectfully express our opposition to this bill. This bill is an unfunded mandate to rural Virginia, and it will not do anything to advance the deployment of broadband in the Commonwealth. Virginia, rural Virginia, simply put it, is hard to serve, and that's why cooperatives exist. And that's why hundreds of millions of dollars were needed to entice these broadband providers to come in and try to serve them. We completely support the deployment of rural broadband, as cooperatives do, but we have absolutely no way to have rural ratepayers be the ones to support this. Rural ratepayers should not be the ones stuck holding the bill for this.
Okay, we're out of time. Just identify yourself. If you're with a group, identify that group and say you're for or against it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ron White with Southside Electric Cooperative, and we are against this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Kyle Allwine, Northern Neck Electric Cooperative, and we strongly oppose this legislation.
Thank you, sir.
Cliff Williamson with the Virginia Agribusiness Council, and we oppose this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Scott Riggleman with Americans for Prosperity. In respect to the patron, we oppose the bill.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Senator Morrison, you want to wrap?
I can wrap this up. Yes, sir.
Okay, Senator Morrison, you want to wrap up?
Yep. The clock is ticking on this federal money, and unserved Virginians will have less broadband without this bill. We've bent over backwards to address the concerns raised by the co-ops, and will continue to work at finding peace in the valley. I think you've just heard it right here. You have he said, she said. Who's going to decide what these issues are? They're very complicated. That's why we have an FCC. FCC regulations have been written into the state code so that they can do that very thing with the FCC. You've heard that this will cause electric rates to go sky high or cooperatives to go bankrupt. It will not, and this type of fear-mongering isn't helpful. Again, this is in on line 202. The State Corporation Commission will consider the effect on broadband deployment, the interest of electric cooperatives, members, and the overall public interest. The State Corporation Commission isn't going to let electric rates go through the roof or force cooperatives to go bankrupt. You have heard that some companies underbid on their VADI projects. Here's the thing. ISPs include reasonable estimates for make-ready in their projects. They shouldn't have to anticipate that a few monopoly pole owners might inflate make-ready costs to double or triple the industry average. This is a complicated subject. We have to solve it. We've just added two capable judges to the SCC. Let's put them to work on this. Last session, we passed some significant legislation related to broadband deployment and railroads, and we empowered the State Corporation Commission to make those decisions. You remember that bill for trying to cross railroad tracks. My bill likewise establishes some consistent and neutral rules and empowers the State Corporation Commission to apply them in a way that considers the interest of broadband, the interest of cooperatives, and the public interest.
Okay, Senator Obenshain's got something.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of thoughts. Number one, there was a rush for companies to enter these contracts, and I've asked a couple of folks, how on earth could you sign a contract with no price in it? I mean, it doesn't get any more fundamental than that. And they did sign it. And one of the co-op representatives just made the point that, very briefly made the point, that this is the reason why co-ops exist, is that they are in existence because these are areas that were too expensive for many of the large-scale electric utilities to provide service to. So members of those communities banded together and formed these co-ops to get electric power to these homes in these areas. It is more expensive to get it to these areas. I live in a county with the name beginning with Rock, okay? That has something to do with the cost and expense of putting poles in and of dealing with this. It is going to be more expensive in some areas of the state to extend this, and I just respectfully submit it's just not fair to make the ratepayers bear the burden of contracts that were entered with no price in them.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I heard All Points saying a moment ago is that if we don't take any kind of action, the people at the end of the line aren't going to get served. And we took action 3 or 4 years ago to try to bring universal broadband to all of Virginia. We had some more federal money that dropped out of the sky recently to help us get that done. And we're not going to get it done unless this problem gets figured out by the legislature, it sounds to me. We also have decisions to make in the Finance Committee about what to do with this BEAD money, that's an ongoing conversation. And it seems to me they're kind of intertwined in a way. And so in light of that, this bill, we don't know exactly how to intertwine it with the finance piece yet. There's another one in the House. I think this thing needs like a reenactment clause for it to just stay alive as a vehicle as the discussions continue. And then we finish the conversation towards the end of session once we have a better idea what's going on with the budget. We also have a better idea about what the law is and what the factual and legal reality is, because I don't think the parties even agree on that. So my motion would be to add a reenactment clause to the bill.
Second.
So the motion second is to add a reenactment clause to be reenacted in the 2025 session of the General.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I could exercise my role as a member of this committee, could I ask a question of one of the broadband folks? Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jimmy, what would occur, if a reenactment clause were placed on this in this bill? Would that put things to a halt because we have no neutral arbiter to be able to sort out the disputes, and that we fall behind and have money clawed back by the federal government?
Senator Marston, I'm not sure that's appropriate to ask.
Mr. Chairman, that's also not what I'm proposing either. I mean,
excuse me?
It's not what I'm proposing. Speaking to my motion?
Senator Surville.
I'm not talking about a reenactment clause to be signed by the governor. This thing needs a reenactment clause to leave this chamber so that it can get in a posture where it can be worked on in the other chamber. That's the idea, Mr. Chairman.
Your term of art confused me.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you can make a substitute motion.
There are only two motions that can come out of here, and that's yours or a PBI. So which is it going to be? I'm just saying.
We have not.
Make your motion again.
Okay, the motion, the primary motion was to put a reenactment clause on the bill. That was seconded. Are there substitute motions?
Well, I was going to move to report it after that, but we have to amend it first.
Okay, then all in favor of that amendment, say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I move to report the bill re-referred to finance as amended.
Second. Substitute motion.
Okay.
Passed by default.
We got a motion to report and re-refer to finance, been seconded. Got a substitute motion.
Passed by default.
PBI, has that been seconded? Okay. Substitute motion takes preference. All in favor, open the rolls.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
So the bill is not PBI. We go back to the primary motion, which is to report and re-refer. Added the reenactment clause.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Okay, the bill is going to finance. Okay, Senator Serva, I know. Senator Perry's a non-member non-member of this committee who has got a bill that's got to go to finance. And I'd ask you to turn your attention to her. Then Senator Serval has two bills. I've got one bill that has to go to finance if it's reported. So you go first, Senator Perry. 708. No, it's the drug bill. Yeah. Yeah.
Governor loves that bill, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Please turn your attention to Senator Perry. It's Senate Bill 708.
Good evening, members. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Turn your attention to Senate Bill 708. I do have a substitute.
Okay, we've got a
substitute.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor of the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the substitute's properly before the committee for Senate Bill 708.
Substitute changes just a few things. It specifies, changes the language to attribute the charge to high volume users as opposed to data centers in particular, and it clarifies what size kilovolt projects the bill is directed at, and the high volume users pay the cost on it. This bill comes about, as you all probably know at this point now, due to the increased number of the electric load on our utilities, particularly in Northern Virginia, in Loudoun County, where I sit, and Fauquier County as well. Currently, there are multiple 500 kilovolt lines. This is a pilot study. I think Joe May, Delegate May, then, who is also from Loudoun County, was the original drafter of this pilot study. Those were for 230 kilovolt lines. This expands that pilot study to 500 kilovolt lines. The bill goes through to avoid specific areas where these 500 kilovolt lines, and for those of you all who aren't familiar, the 500 kilovolt lines are like those really huge ones like you see by the airport. As it currently stands right now, There are a couple projects in Loudoun to run 500 kilovolt lines. One of those projects is down through the Lansdowne area. For those of y'all who are familiar with Loudoun County, that's over by the Lansdowne Hospital. That poses a number of problems, not the least of which is they would like to construct a new helipad to get people back and forth to the hospital. For those of y'all who fly or know anything about it, that causes problems for our electric lines to be there where you're trying to take off with your helicopter. Out in western Loudoun, they're proposing a number of other lines. And let me go back to the Lansdowne ones. Those ones also run through, scenic view sheds and other protected areas. The one in western Loudoun run through people's conservation easements. They're farmlands that they've had for hundreds of years. This bill just seeks to try to take those lines and give the SEC some guidance on undergrounding those bills. I will say, and you may hear today, some folks saying we can't underground 500 kilovolt lines. We've never done that before. Other countries have done that before, and we have had some folks look at the engineering on it and say that it can be done. It is more expensive, and that's an ongoing issue here in the Commonwealth. Who's going to pay for the power lines to run to all of these data centers? If you built a house, I think this example was given the other day, if you built a house up on a mountain, you're the one who's going to be paying for your sewage lines and your water lines to run out to your mountain. The way we have it here in Virginia currently, everyone pays for those power lines to run out to those data centers who are the ones who need the power. I do have several witnesses here, and I'm happy to take questions.
Well, I'm curious. I need to seek the advice of the committee. My sense was the data center bills needed to be carried over because of the JLARC study, but this bill relates to an existing pilot program that's in the code. So it's not specific to data centers necessarily.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Are there questions for Senator Perry?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Perry, when I'm looking at lines 121 through 123, am I reading that correctly? Like that high volume dealers like the shipyard and Hampton Roads would be, those types of entities would be the ones paying the cost for this undergrounding?
Yeah, the high volume customers, and I think PEC is here. There's a couple different people who can certainly comment on that, who have more expertise in this area than I do. But the high volume customers are generally going to be data centers. It is the exceptionally high volume customers. So it's not going to be your, certainly not many, if not all of your, what was the example you gave, Senator McDougal? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Senator McDougal. Would you say a facility of a manufacturing facility?
Newport News Shipyard, which is a high volume producer in our area.
The Newport News Shipyard,
I'll defer to PEC on that answer.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we could hear from the power companies too, who are the high volume customers, because I don't know, is that defined anywhere?
So that's a good idea, Senator McDougal.
The high-volume customers driving this load demand specifically along this 500 kV line, and that would primarily in Loudoun County be the data centers. There may be a few that are over 100 megawatts, but the vast majority are going to be the data centers.
Okay, Senator Evan, did you have a question? Senator,
Mr. Chairman, can we hear from the electric companies of who are high volume customers? See Mr. Murray walking out.
Mr. Murray, maybe you can tell us if you've looked at this bill, who would be the high
Mr. Chairman, I hasten to add that as has been our tradition since 2008, we view this as a policy choice for you all. So we have never taken a position on one of these bills. So as not to breach customer confidentiality, the patron is correct. It is mostly data centers. There are a couple of very large manufacturing customers. I would describe them as non-defense manufacturing customers, and then one very large federal account.
Okay. Senator Steph.
Mr. Chairman, a question for the patron. Mr. Chairman, if I may. So I'm trying to understand this a little bit better, and I believe we have a couple of what we'll call the high volume customers, one being the U.S. Navy down where I am, and I believe Steel Incorporated is one, and we actually do have one data center. We have a large company called Amazon down there. that operates a few facilities that use a tremendous amount of electricity as well. It looks like when I went through this that we're looking at about multi-billion dollars to underground a cable this large. And then who pays this and how will this affect the Commonwealth rates is my concern. And if I could, how does this affect the Commonwealth rates?
Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStuff, I don't know about the billion-dollar rates or the billion-dollar cost for undergrounding. I think it depends on the project, where you're trying to underground and how much you're trying to underground. I will say for at least one of the projects up in Loudoun, we're not looking at billions of dollars. We've had our own estimates done up there, and that's not the number. In terms of, Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStuff, in terms of the question about how does this impact rates, well, currently, the people who are using these high amount of electricity, right? We're all paying for that. You're paying for that. I'm paying for that. Everyone who's in this room, who's in Virginia, is paying for that, right? Paying for these very, very high users. What this bill does is says that's fine if you want to be a very, very high user, if it's necessary for your company or whatever else, but you need to pay your share of that. So my guess is what it would do for the rates for you, presuming you're not a high user, presuming I'm not a high user, right, is that my rates would go down because I'm no longer paying for Amazon's data center.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, one quick follow-up. And Senator Perry, you said that you guys determined how much this was going to cost. What's the distance to underground this, and what is the cost of undergrounding this at the distance in what you're referring to specifically on the project you're referring to here?
Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStuff, if I could call up Brian Turner here. He's the one who has the expertise on those specific numbers.
Thank you, Senator Perry. I'm Brian Turner. I'm the General Counsel for the Lansdowne Conservancy. We have hired engineers. They looked at this project. You're looking at a 1.9-mile undergrounding project. Dominion has quoted the project, the total Aspen, the Golden Project, at $800 million. Our energy engineers with that 1.9-mile undergrounding platform would be $993 million. And let me just add that this is just one project. This bill addresses just this one project. So you're spreading out the cost for this one project to the high users, the high voltage users, which is typically the data centers, which would be a de minimis number to those individuals. And let me just say that this is probably the most important aspect when it comes to cost. These lines would not be necessary but for the industry's high demand for electricity.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Perry, thank you.
Okay, are there additional questions for Senator Perry? This bill is not specific to Loudoun County, is it?
No, Mr. Chairman. It's a pilot study program, right?
It could happen anywhere in Virginia.
It could happen anywhere.
Well, would you object if we limited it to Planning District 8? Yeah.
If I could consult with counsel here.
That doesn't change who pays for it.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Well, I think there are two primary elements, one of which is the community impact of transmission lines, the second of which is the transfer of potential cost. That is one of the things that JLARC is studying, because frankly large consumers also pay down fuel costs. So when you do a rate structure for larger users, sometimes they pay a higher proportion of different fees. And so there is an interconnection relationship also in the total distribution, and that's why JLARC is starting to dig into what are the macro costs, what are the transfer costs to bring back to us, because depending on the rates and what they're paying, peak loads and other things, sometimes they pay higher rates, which actually reduces the rates on consumers. And so we need to have, I think, more data to the table, Mr. Chairman. And I understand what the patron's trying to do, and we have a lot of different issues all across Virginia trying to deal with this, and I don't disagree with some of the arguments. But I'm cautious by us relying on one data point when there's, I think, multiple factors involved.
This specific, the cost sharing is something that JLARC's looking at in the data center study? Okay. 3 minutes aside, or the people that are for the bill, please, you've got 3 minutes. Be respectful of other people's time, please.
Thank you, Chair Deeds, members of the Senate Commerce and Labor Committee. I'm Brian Turner. I'm the General Counsel to the Lansdowne Conservancy in Loudoun County. For transparency, I'd like to state that I am partner in a law firm, which Senator Perry is also partner, and that Senator Perry is elected representative of the Lansdowne Conservancy, which is my client. You should have received communications and supporting documentation for Senate Bill 708, and so I'll make my comments brief and leave time for questions from me and our engineers who are on the line. Dominion Energy will be filing an application with the State Corporation Commission within weeks for a 10-mile, 500 kV, 230 kV line in Loudoun County. This line traverses primarily developed neighborhoods and businesses. There is a 1.9-mile stretch of this line in particular that contains significant scenic and historic landmarks and view sheds. It also traverses or directly impacts the Nova Loudoun Hospital, the Loudoun Freedom Center, which is a historic cemetery for enslaved, the Belmont Viewshed easement, and the Lansdowne Route 7 scenic easement, as well as an elementary school, a religious K-12 private school, and Loudoun Community Church. Our experienced energy engineers have developed a feasible and credible plan to underground the 1.9-mile stretch that I just described. Their plan addresses all of the concerns that are generally raised about undergrounding 500 kV lines. We intend to work with Dominion on this project, not against them. The Commonwealth's recent explosive demand for energy consumption has triggered proposals for new transmission lines all over our community in Northern Virginia and elsewhere. Our communities need to have the ability to work with utility companies to bury these lines in appropriate locations where feasible to do so, as it is in this case. Approval of this pilot program will provide an appropriate mechanism to protect important resources in Loudoun County and may be useful in other areas where the power demand grows. Results from a JLARC study will come too late for the study to help this project because the application is about to be filed. As such, we respectfully request you approve this bill.
Okay, we've got about a minute left for anybody else that's interested in saying they're for this bill.
What we're facing is unprecedented load demand in the state of Virginia. Most of it is going to Data Center Alley. We are facing massive projects right now. They've moved through the PJM process. They're now going through our utilities and being planned out. We need this now. It can't wait till after
Please
JLARC.
identify yourself and where
I'm
you're
Julie
from.
Bolthouse with Piedmont Environmental Council.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Elena Schlossberg, the Coalition to Protect Prince William County. I'm going to be really brief. You guys have seen us here for going on 8 years now. It's time to make a change. It is time to make the data center industry pay for their own extension cords.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chris Lane, Virginia League of Conservation Voters. Expanding the underground pilot has substantial conservation value to public land and conservation easements. Payment for these lines is paid for appropriately by the folks creating the demand for the power rather than all the ratepayers. And we'd like to thank the patron for introducing this legislation and ask for your support.
Okay, thank you. We've only got 2 seconds.
Lillian Anderson, Virginia Conservation Network. We support the bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Mr. Chair, Elizabeth Parker with Troutman Pepper on behalf of Loudoun County. We support the bill and thank the patron.
Okay, are there people online? Therefore, there are not. Okay, 3 minutes for the other side. Please identify yourself.
Hi, Kate Smiley with the Data Center Coalition. I want to speak to a few points. First of all, I appreciate that despite the language change, we've sort of seen this is a data center bill. Speaking also to another point having to do with paying for data center energy use, let's make a distinction between paying for energy use and paying for infrastructure. If it's infrastructure that we're talking about, which I believe the patron is talking about in this bill, we're talking about transmission lines building out, not day-to-day use at an AWS facility or a Google facility of their energy. Yes, JLARC is looking at that issue because, and I think fairly, they want to make sure that no customer class is unreasonably subsidized by other customer classes. I think that is very reasonable. We support this study. I just want to, make one last point, which is that when it comes to undergrounding 500 kV lines, I believe there's only been one attempt in the United States. They've done it in Australia. They've done it in China. There has been 0 studies as to the reliability of these projects, the resilience of these projects, or the affordability of these projects. With that, thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Tracy Banner with McGuire Woods Consulting, representing QTS, a data center operator and developer in Henrico, Loudoun, and Prince William County. We support opposition of this bill. We oppose this bill, support the JLARC study because we all need to have the same set of facts about who's going to pay for what. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Stacey Gordon with the Virginia Manufacturers Association. We strongly support this bill. This would impact manufacturers, and unfortunately, we only saw the updated language a few hours ago, so I can't really speak to how wide the impact would be, but it definitely would make manufacturing less competitive, and we strongly support this bill, oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Is there anybody online that needs to speak? Okay. Senator Perry, you want to wrap up?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I would just ask you all to support this bill. This is something that's very important to Loudoun County, something that I think was mentioned, that if you pass it over to the JLARC study, I understand they are looking at that this is a pilot program. It tracks the statutory language that's already part of the part of the code, and that next year when JLARC gets their study and does this, that, and the other, will be, well, too late. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The committee operates on motion. Senator Eben.
Yeah, this seems to have an $800 or $900 million price tag, and I'm not comfortable making a decision on that price tag tonight, so I would move that we refer it to the JLARC study. Carry over and refer it to the JLARC study.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion? A second. Are there alternative motions? Okay, please open the roll.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Survell's got 508 and 729. Which one do you want to do first?
Let's do 508.
508. Okay, is there a motion? Okay, is there a second? Okay, you still want to go, Senator Survell?
A sense of foreboding, Mr. Chairman. So Senate Bill 508 just creates it allows geothermal systems to participate in the RPS that we established for the VCEA. Maryland did something similar to this a couple of years ago, and they've got a geothermal business that's exploding because of the actions they've taken. So everybody's familiar, geothermal is basically you set up a heating and cooling system where it pumps water underground and it uses the ground to create heating and cooling, and it's like way more efficient than electricity, gas, or just any other form of heating and cooling we do.
Is there a substitute for this bill, Senator?
Oh, I thought I just heard okay, I thought somebody was adopting it with a joke motion. I guess not. I move my substitute.
Second. Okay, got a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? The substitute's properly before the committee.
So, Mr. Chairman, with the new IRA, the federal tax credits got enacted, the federal government now pays for a third of the costs for geothermal systems, which has made them much more economic for consumers and businesses. And so basically what the bill does is it adds geothermal to the RPS. It gives geothermal kilowatt-hour credit for the RECs at the rate they established in Maryland. And then it creates a work group to meet, the SEC to convene a work group to set specific geothermal goals going forward so that there'll be a little bit more pressure on the REC price so that the RECs will be more valuable, but we have to figure out what's technologically feasible. So that's basically what the bill does.
Okay, are there questions for Senator Survell?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
How many of these geothermal facilities exist in Virginia right now?
I don't know. Well, these aren't, people can put them on their house. So for example, I know Senator Peterson had one put on his house like 15 years ago, but they exist in residential context. I'm not sure how many commercial contexts there are. I know in Maryland, they have other legislation pending this year to try to incentivize them to put them on their schools because they're so efficient. And there's also talk about setting up residential systems to like put multiple houses together in certain areas around the country. But you have to have the right incentives in place to energize, to get the market going. And that's basically what this is designed to do. And I think that it makes it easier for us to meet our renewable energy goals if we give credit for this.
Senator Overton.
Mr. Chairman, am I correct in understanding that this substitute removes the goals and targets that were in the original bill?
Correct. The original bill had targets that were based on the Maryland law, and the industry came to me and thought that those targets were unrealistic in Virginia, so I removed them and told the work group to go figure them out over the next year.
Are there other questions for Senator Survell? Are there people here in favor of the bill? Are there people opposed to the bill? There are people online. Okay.
There's some people in favor too. Yeah.
Oh, you're in favor of the bill?
Yeah. Apologies, sir. Chris Lane, Virginia League of Conservation Voters. Similar to energy efficiency, geothermal heating and cooling can serve as a demand-side resource to reduce energy loads from the hard-to-decarbonize heating and cooling sector. We want to thank the patron for bringing this bill forward and ask for your support. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, members of the committee, Blair St. Ledger Olson with Climate Cabinet Action, echo the comments made by Chris Lane, and we thank the patron for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Thank you to the patron for bringing the bill. We support this.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Thomas Turner, Conservatives to Clean Energy. Reasons stated before you all, we support this bill.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Victoria Higgins, Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Lillian Anderson with Virginia Conservation Network, and we support the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy, and with gratitude to the patron for working through our concerns, we do support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Richard Lay, please unmute your mic and give your testimony.
Thank you, Senators. Richard Lay, past director of the Virginia Geothermal Heat Pump Association. I and our association members strongly support this bill. A winner on many levels. It reverses injustice by creating parity with the state's solar and wind industries, greatly benefiting Virginia citizens, businesses, and utilities alike. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else? Are there people that are opposed to this legislation? Okay, motion to report is going to have to be a motion to report and refer to finance.
Move to report and refer to finance.
Okay, are there alternative motions? Please open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Still opposed.
Ayes 9, no 6. 729, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a substitute. I'd move my substitute.
Okay, motion and a second on the substitute for 729. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've 729, the substitute form is for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 729 is a bill to create what's now called the Virginia Clean Energy Innovation Bank. I've been working with the administration, Department of Energy, a little bit to make this, I think, a bill that we can all support. The idea behind this is to create a new authority, which would have a board that's appointed by the House, the Senate, and the governor, that would then take some amount of money, which the Finance Committee would have to figure out, Madam Chair. Yeah, and then use that money to leverage federal funds. We took some testimony at the Commission on Utility Regulation back in December from the U.S. Department of Energy about a $350 billion loan program they have, where if the state puts in $10 million, the DOE would lend to Virginia companies or localities over $300 million. They leverage it at a 93% to 97% ratio, but the feds want to see a little bit of state skin in the game before they'll agree to make a loan. And so that's basically what this does, is it creates an opportunity for us to sort of catalyze some very low interest and federally backed loans for clean and green energy projects in our state. It also has provisions that parallel what we're putting in the cannabis bill in terms of economically disadvantaged communities. It says that a certain amount of money investments have to happen there. But the real key to the whole thing is whether we can put some money in it. Because there's no money in it, it can't do anything. So that's the next conversation.
And I assume that you have a budget amendment in for it, is that right?
I do.
Okay. Are there questions for Senator Servell? Okay, are there people that are for this legislation? Please come forward. 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Glenn Davis, Department of Energy. The agency and the administration was working on a state energy finance institution prior to session. We appreciate working with the senator on the verbiage and the policy around this, and we do support this language going forward.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, As amended, the creation of the Virginia Clean Energy Innovation Authority will use public dollars to leverage private investment, unleashing opportunities to finance clean energy, greenhouse gas emission reduction projects, and other qualified projects through strategic deployment of grants, loans, credit enhancements, and other financing mechanisms. This legislation will accelerate the rollout of clean energy, expand access to untapped markets, and bring benefits to historically underserved communities, positioning Virginia to compete for its share of billions of dollars available in federal clean energy investments. We strongly support this bill and would ask you to do as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Climate Cabinet Action, testifying in support of the bill, and we thank the patron. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Thanks to the patron for bringing this bill. Will allow Virginia to access millions of federal dollars that are out there for these clean energy projects. So we support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Peter Anderson with Appalachian Voices. With our thanks to the patron, we also support the bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Lillian Anderson with Virginia Conservation Network, and we also support this bill.
Okay, are there people that have another view that oppose this legislation? Are there people online who oppose the legislation? Okay, a motion, if the bill's going to be reported, it's got to go to finance.
Second.
Okay, are there alternative motions? If not, please open the roll. The usual no's.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Okay. Ayes 10, noes 5. Senator Peake, Senator Peake broke the mold. Okay. I was going to ask Senator Lucas to take over, but I'll ask Senator Marston to take over because the last bill that has to go to finance, if it's purported, is my bill. So you're the chair.
Okay.
And I've got, it's Senate Bill 274, creates the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. It's a bill we passed last year, and the bill that I'm honored to patron this year with Senator Stanley. Well, Virginians are facing a crisis of skyrocketing prescription drug costs while pharmaceutical companies are making record profits. Virginians spend 36% more per person than the national average on prescription drugs, leading to 1 in 4 Virginians not taking their medicine as prescribed due to cost. 2/3 of Virginians regularly take prescription drugs, and a similar 2 of every 3 Virginians worry they won't be able to afford their medicine this year. Meanwhile, drug companies are making record profits as they hike the list price for 112 drugs, higher than the rate of inflation last year. And the largest pharmaceutical company, Pfizer, nearly tripled its earnings over the past 2 years, bringing in $100 billion in revenues. So this creates a prescription drug affordability board that basically has the power to review the cost and try to negotiate with the companies and bring down the cost of prescriptions. There's no silver bullet to fixing the prescription drug industry. It takes federal action and state action, and it'll take a whole lot of bills. But to me, this bill is quite simple. It's the most powerful tool we as a Commonwealth have at our disposal to take action for our constituents and tangibly make their medicine more affordable. We can meaningfully lower the cost of living and ensure that drug companies don't get to charge whatever they want for the cost of a pill.
Senator Deeds, question from the new chairman of Commerce and Labor. A number of states have taken this on.
Several states have.
And Maryland, I know, has been involved with it since, 2019, and has not done one single drug in terms of reducing the price.
But we are better than Maryland.
Well,
we have a substitute. I apologize.
Okay.
So I'll move.
I have a motion on substitute.
Second.
All in favor of the substitute, say aye. Aye. Substitutes before us, and by the way, Maryland just took our lunch money with getting the FBI.
Well, they did that, but we're going to take their lunch money when it comes to making sure that we've got a prescription drug affordability board that works.
Other questions from the members of the committee for Senator Deeds? pause for just a moment to get the substitute out.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peake's got something.
Right. Just a
Hold on
comment.
Senator Peake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment for the patron who talked about the profits. It's not the profits that bother me so much, it's the commercials.
The commercials?
The commercials.
Thank you. Other questions from members of the committee for Senator Deeds? All right.
You probably have people here that would like to
Yes, we
speak.
do. Could we set the timer 3 minutes aside? Could we have, first off, those who are in favor of Senator Deeds' Senate Bill 274? How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Jared Calfee with AARP Virginia. We strongly support the bill. We represent Virginians over 50, and among our nearly 1 million members in the Commonwealth, the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs is the issue that we hear about the most. We took a survey last summer and found that 2/3 of Virginia voters over 18 are currently taking prescription medications. All voters over the age of 18, 2/3 are taking prescription medications. So this issue impacts everyone. Some progress at the federal level has provided some help for those enrolled in Medicare, but we can take action here in Virginia to help everybody else. And as a bonus, the Commonwealth spends over $3 billion a year on prescription drugs. So this legislation has the potential to save taxpayers money as well at the state and local level. Virginians pay 36% more for prescriptions than the national average, and so Virginia should be a leader in this area. We shouldn't be following other states, even though we have seen significant progress made in states like Colorado and Minnesota. So I hope that Virginia will take this opportunity to lead and support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my name is Dr. Rochelle Klinger. I'm a psychiatrist, board certified for 38 years. I came here to talk about the problems that people with severe mental illness face in getting their medication. As you know, when people have severe mental illness, particularly psychosis, part of the illness is they do not realize they need medication. The mainstay of treatment for this population of folks who can't or won't take oral medication are the second generation antipsychotics. These are the newer medications that can be given as injections by psychiatrists and nurses as once a month, and some of them as infrequently as 2 to 4 times a year to keep people on their medication. We all know the consequences when people don't take their medication, particularly to themselves, but also to the members of the community. And there, I can give you a very quick example. No examples. Okay. It can
People
be
lined up here. So.
Okay, sorry about that. It can be up to $5,000 per injection under the copay of many policies.
Thank you very much.
So
Next.
I strongly support this. Thank you.
Good evening, Rena Hicks with Freedom, Virginia. I'll just note that a 2022 report analyzing the manufacturers of drugs that were selected for Medicare's price negotiations, which many of those will overlap with Virginia's most burdensome drugs, found that manufacturers collectively spent $10 billion less on research and development than on corporate expenses. Those include executive compensation, stock buybacks, and dividends to shareholders. So please support this bill. Thank you.
Okay, next, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jeff Caruso at the Virginia Catholic Conference. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And next.
Good evening, Tanya James on behalf of the National Association of Benefits and Insurance Professionals, formerly the Virginia Association of Health Underwriters, representing hundreds of thousands of individuals, families, employers, and employees across the Commonwealth. We support this bipartisan legislation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I believe we have 4 people online. Could you come online, identify yourself, and tell us who you are, who you represent, and whether you and why, and that you support the bill?
Oestis Sarkash, please mute your mic and turn your camera on.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Oestis Sarkash. I'm the Public Policy Director for Small Business Majority, representing small businesses across the state. We're in support of this bill. We believe it'll bring down prices for small employers and for their workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Bernita Richardson, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Bernita Richardson. I'm here to speak in favor of the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. I'm a physician assistant, and I've worked with families to get them medications that are needed for diseases such as asthma, although they have insurance. And on a personal note, I have been impacted by the cost of drugs, as my grandfather, who was diagnosed with prostate cancer, was prescribed a medication that cost $327 a pill.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next.
Irvin Varconyi, please provide your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Irvin Varconyi. I'm a 73-year-old retiree living in Fairfax County, and I'm an example of one of those co-pays. I take Skyrizi for severe psoriasis, and my co-pays for my injection can reach as much as $8,000. You can save a lot of money for Virginians by enacting this bill sponsored by Senator Dietz. I also would commend you as a taxpayer to save the Virginia taxpayers the buildings that Jared had mentioned, because since 2007, the SB 274 will limit for price drugs when you pay for health insurance plans, inmates, and others. I urge you strongly to support this legislation.
Okay, thank you, Irv. Next.
Ashley Van Meter, please unmute your mic and give your testimony.
So my name is Ashley Van Meter. I am with the Association for Accessible Medicines. We actually were part of an organization that came up with this language that was passed in Maryland and other states. We support the bill. Things have changed in the biosimilar space since it's changed, and we would just like to work with you on making a few small changes to help with the passage.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think it's only fair to add 245 to the 3 minutes.
I will so order to add 245, so let's go with 5 minutes and 45 seconds. And those who are in opposition to the bill.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Chris White with the Vector Corporation. I'm here on behalf of Pharma. Blessed are the brief. I'd only make 2 points in opposition to the bill. First, as Senator Marsden indicated, there's been 8 or 9 states across the country that have enacted this legislation, have spent millions of dollars setting up boards, hiring staff, consultants, and so forth and so on. But no state that has passed this legislation and set up a prescription drug affordability board has saved a patient a dime. The second point I would make on this legislation is that it doesn't address all the other players in the supply chain. We all know that when a manufacturer makes a drug and it gets into a patient's hands, there's a lot of other players in that supply chain. If we're going to try to do something that is holistic to try to work on lowering healthcare costs, all the players in the supply chain need to be involved, not just one. We'd ask that you oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Scott Johnson. I represent the Virginia Biotechnology Association, which is headquartered right across the street. That's over 300 bioscience companies in Virginia that has over 26,000 local jobs with projects like you've heard down in Petersburg and that have been proposed in Southwest Virginia. Our member companies face a lot of headwinds as far as where development takes place, and we face headwinds with people being attracted to North Carolina, to Boston, to California. We want to remain competitive. We ask you to oppose this bill because we think it will hurt us on a competitive front.
Thank you. Next.
Members of the committee, my name is Matt Catter with the Rare Action Access Project. We represent rare disease patients. PDABs do not work. With respect to the patron, I served as the acting administrator of HCVA, now CMS, 40 years ago, and the president challenged me within 12 months to find a solution to drug pricing. I'm a Virginian. Most of the people on my group were Virginians. 40 years later, we haven't solved the problem. What will happen with this PDAB board is you'll identify the high-cost drugs. The majority of those are rare disease patients. The horrific outcome you don't anticipate here is that you'll have rare disease patients and their families lining up your door talking about the unintended consequence of denying coverage because you reduce the price on a rare disease drug that cannot amortize its costs except on the backs of these rare disease patients. You've got to oppose this bill. It needs a lot more work. Let's put it over and work on getting the right solution that all Virginians can work on and agree on together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, committee, I'm Dr. Harry Gawanter. I'm a pediatric rheumatologist from Richmond. I'm the president of Virginia Society of Rheumatology. You have also received letters on our behalf from the Coalition of State Rheumatology Organizations, American College of Rheumatology, and the Arthritis Foundation expressing our concerns. With all due respect, Senator Dietz, to paraphrase Inigo Montoya from the Princess Bride, I do not believe this bill will do what you think this bill will do. And the reason is because when you look at the drug supply system, the manufacturers are up here. They're paying money out to wholesalers, to PBMs, to insurers. You're going to change the price at the top. You're doing nothing with everybody else in the system. The best analogy I can give you is from the original Mattress Factory ads. They talk about manufacturers build a mattress, they add a markup, sell it to a wholesaler, adds a markup, builds it to a store. Same deal with drugs. The manufacturer makes it, they have to give rebates, it gets marked up at the PBMs and discounted at the PBMs, passed on to pharmacies. You are comparing price and cost. The actual cost is determined by the PBMs. I urge you to oppose this bill.
Thank you so much. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ethan Betterton with the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Echoing Mr. Johnson's comments, we are concerned that this legislation would impact the development of the pharmaceutical industry in Virginia. It is something we're trying to grow. The federal government's designated a tech hub, as he mentioned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else? How many online? We have no opposition online. Senator Deeds, would you like to come to sum it up?
We pay too much for pharmaceuticals, for drugs in Virginia. Our constituents expect us to do what we can to bring down the cost of living for them, and that's what this bill is. You know, I think you have to examine every state where this has been tried before you can say that it's been a failure across the board. And I think in certain states, in Colorado, Minnesota, for example, they've had some success. I think that there's no reason to think we couldn't do what others can't do as well. We're Virginia, after all. You know, we can do things here. And on behalf of Senator Stanley.
Yeah, Senator Deeds, question. What is the cost of establishing this board?
Well, I think that's what has to go to Senate Finance to figure out.
Was there a budget amendment?
There was a budget amendment. I don't remember what it was.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you so much. Senator Stanley.
Speak to the bill, and I'm very honored to sit with my good friend Senator Deeds on this. There are people in Southside and Southwest Virginia. Remember, we have a per capita family for average income of $38,000, $40,000. There are people that are making a decision of whether to pay for the medications or pay for the food for their children or put shoes and socks on their feet. That's not right. And what this commission aims to do is to actually bring in line fairness so that people in my region, in rural areas and urban areas, have opportunities to live because they're not making life choices of whether to put food on the table or the medicine that will keep them alive so that they can raise their children. I think this is a very good bill.
Senator Peake.
All right. Senator Peake, you're in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Deeds, Senator Stanley, I have to say, I'm really not a big fan of what this bill does, which is more government and putting government in charge. But when you listen to what we just heard, the one gentleman said he's been working on this for 40 years and nothing's happened. 40 years and nothing's happened. I heard somebody else talk about the PBMs. I know we've had PBMs over the years. We talked about it, and I think there's a bill about PBMs. I don't know if it's pharmaceutical companies or the PBMs, but I know it's been 40 years, and our people are paying too much, especially if you represent rural districts where you have some lower income people. I know most of these drugs, or way too many of them, are made in China and not America. And I don't know if this is the right way or not, but we had this bill last year. We passed out of the Senate last year, and not a single, and people keep saying, well, we got a better plan, we got a better plan. We had the same bill last year, and not a single thing happened. And then we get this bill again, they say, well, we need to do something, Well, why didn't we do anything in the past year? So I'm not a big fan of this bill, but I want to see something done because people in my jurisdictions are paying too much for prescription drugs made somewhere else.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
I move to report and refer to finance.
Second.
All right, motions before us to report and refer to finance. All in favor, vote aye. Opposed, no.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Okay.
Ayes 10, noes 5. The
Thank-
bill is reported and referred to finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're through the first group of bills now, the bills that have to go to finance. We're going to do the bills next that are our non-member bills, and Van Valkenburg, you're the first one on the list. You've got, I think, Senate Bill 360. Turn your attention to Senator Van Valkenburg.
And there's a substitute, Mr. Chair.
There's a substitute for 360. Is there a motion on the substitute? Okay, a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The substitute's properly before the committee. Turn your attention to Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'll be brief because I know there's people that are going to want to talk to it in your time. This is the non-compete bill that was amended on the floor, and I asked for it to be re-referred back to committee. And the reason I wanted it re-referred back to committee is if we were going to expand the scope, I wanted to make sure that we put appropriate guardrails on it like we have in the other states that have done this. Last time I was before you, I talked about 3 states having banned it. It's actually 5. I didn't update my facts. The substitute bans non-competes completely, which is the amendment from Senator McPike, but we added exceptions in there. And so I'm just going to tick through those exceptions real quick. There's exceptions including the sale of a business, the dissolution of a partnership, or the dissolution or termination of interest in a limited liability company. There's also language that tightens the language around disclosures of trade secrets, disclosure of confidential and proprietary client information, and solicitation of clients of the employer, right? So making sure that we know that it's not going into those places. And so those guardrails are based on those other states that have done this in the past. I'll just close with 3 things because we have heard the concept before. I'll close with 3 things. First is we've seen this done in other states and we've seen it work. So, one thing you're going to hear from the parade of people that want to get up here is that it might hurt their industry. We've seen in Hawaii, for example, where they ban non-competes just for tech workers. And so economists have done studies looking at Hawaii versus other states. All right, in Oregon, where they ban non-competes for low-wage workers like we have, they compared that to other states. And what you see in all these studies, right, is a couple things. You see that wages go up, job mobility rises, and entrepreneurship rises. Second point I'll make is you're going to hear comments about training. Well, what if we train workers? Okay. Why do they have to have a non-compete clause for 10 to 20 years if they've trained a worker? You can put a clause into the contract that talks about if we're going to train you and you leave before a certain amount of time, you have to pay back a portion of the training expenses, right? And the last thing I'll say is no matter what state you're looking at that's done this, they have something that addresses the concerns of the folks that are going to come up here. Banks. You've got major banks located in California where these things are outlawed. Tech, Hawaii, the energy sector, Oklahoma, North Dakota. Right? These are all states that have banned non-compete clauses, put these guardrails on, and have successful economies where you have increased job mobility, increased wages, and the last point, increased entrepreneurship. The average entrepreneur is around 40 years old and tends to be an entrepreneur within the sector they're in. And if we are non-competing people out of the ability to create business, we're not letting them be entrepreneurs. And so I will end there.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Senator Van
Mr.
Valkenburg?
Chairman.
Senator Obenshain, then Senator Servell.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, so I live in a rural part of the state. There is a struggling, privately owned, medical community, large hospital. Many of these little medical practices spend a lot of resources trying to convince doctors to move to our area to work for these small, unaffiliated practices. And the only way that they keep the large hospital system from engaging in predatory practices, just hiring the people that come because they can pay more, because they can charge more, because the insurance structure is often non-competes. Is there anything here that can protect those small practices?
Mr. Chair and Senator Obenshain, I would say not necessarily, but I would respond. I would go back to the previous committee we had where we had rural doctors talking about the importance of how these non-compete clauses are damaging to rural health care, and was specifically referencing situations for why it was necessary to ban non-competes in the name of a robust healthcare system in the rural areas.
Most of them would like to go work for those large hospitals.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Servo.
Thanks. Senator, I just want to make clear about this bill. This bill does not prohibit any employer from having their employees sign a non-solicit agreement, which means they can't solicit their employees. I think there's a specific language in there, right? It also does not prohibit an employer from suing their employee for the theft of trade secrets, and it also does not prohibit an employer from suing an employee who conspires with another employee to steal business from that employer, because that's also a separate violation of Virginia law. That none of that is prohibited or affected by your bill, right?
Madam Chair, I would say that Senator Servo is correct.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Madam Chair, Senator Servo is correct.
Questions by any other member of the committee?
Madam Chair.
Senator McPike.
Madam Chair, and to the patron, the example we just given, this does not affect any existing contracts. Is that correct?
Madam Chair.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Madam Chair, I would tell Senator McPike that's correct.
Thank you. Follow up, Madam Chair.
McPike.
And so what this really does is really structure, I think, to Senator Openshain's point, it requires sort of restructuring, rethinking of contracts signed after the enactment in this legislation, of whether it's paying off education expenses, home ownership down payments, and other incentives that have clawback clauses versus you as an individual are limiting your economic opportunity, and you can't compete in that small town, or you have an abusive relationship with that employer, or any number of other factors that are not going well. Isn't that the case?
Madam Chair.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would say that's correct, and I would add that one of the problems with non-compete clauses is that they are such a blunt tool when we have these other mechanisms that are usable. And by being such a blunt tool, what we see is they lower job mobility, they lower wages, and they lower entrepreneurship.
Questions by any other member of the committee? Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of the bill? Opposition? Anyone online? Come forward, state your name. I think he was given 3 minutes each side. Clerk should start.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Nicole Brenner with Reed Smith on behalf of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate the senator sharing his substitute in advance. We would still respectfully oppose for the following reasons. Companies invest significantly in developing their market share, client lists, and branding. It is critical that they're able to protect these investments by requiring reasonable 1 year, not 10 or 20-year non-competes with current employees, and to keep those employees from using assets gained during employment to compete. It is hard to prove that someone is using confidential information, and by requiring 1-year non-competes, this allows the information that employees have retained to not be quite as competitive. The customer relationships that employees develop are developed for their employer, and they are paid to do so. Often those customer relationships were developed before that employee was even hired. Prohibiting employees from using that investment for a year levels the playing field and allows the employer to recoup its investment. Allowing an employee to trade on those relationships immediately for the benefit of a competitor allows the competitor to steal that goodwill at the expense of the company who developed it. Businesses also spend significant resources training their employees on proprietary processes or methods. That is not protected in this substitute. They should be able to ensure that those investments are not immediately used for a competitor. The substitute before you does not address any of these issues and is effectively a total ban on non-compete agreements. The substitute allows for extremely limited use cases and eliminates the vast majority, likely more than 90 or 95% of non-compete agreements. Dissolutions and sale do not represent the majority of use for non-competes. The substitute precludes employers from using non-competes in the normal course for employees who access trade secrets and other proprietary information. We would ask you to oppose, and it would affect current non-competes if they were renewed after July 1.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Brent Rawlings, Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association. We're opposed to the legislation. I appreciate the guardrails that were added. We think that's an incomplete set of guardrails. Our concern is this is detrimental to our ability to recruit and retain physicians in Virginia to get them to serve the communities. Senator Obenshain asked a good question. He's concerned about hospitals grabbing up physicians. Hospitals are looking over their shoulders, looking at private equity and other threats to be able to retain those folks. We also appreciate that the laws have passed in other states. A great example is D.C., just north of Potomac. 21 passed a non-compete. They have a specific carve-out for medical specialists, so we're already at a disadvantage competing with those. Along the same lines, there's reference about clawback provisions. There's nothing in here that expressly permits that, and we can't restructure something if we don't have permission to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, please. And about 30 seconds for the two.
Mr. Chair, Ed Farron with Capital One. We respectfully oppose Senate Bill 360. This bill puts Virginia on equal footing with California. It is a total ban on non-competes for new hires and existing employees, particularly those who are exposed to a company's trade secrets and proprietary business information. We at Capital One strategically use these sparingly, just for that case, those who are exposed to our trade secrets. We use them only with executives and select workers who create and are exposed to these trade secrets. If this bill were to pass, it would eliminate the long-standing precedent of the Virginia Supreme Court that recognizes use cases to protect trade secrets.
Thank you so much. Please be very brief.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Bruni with the Virginia Bankers Association. I want to associate my comments with the rest of the speakers. A lot of other states that have gone in this direction have an income threshold, including New York, which the governor just vetoed because it wasn't as expansive as she wanted it. So this is a major policy shift. It needs some time. We appreciate the guardrails in there. It's got a long way to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Morrison.
Matt Bruni, could I ask you a question? On a scale of 1 to 10, how many problems did the substitute solve in terms of moving this towards a more acceptable bill?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, I think there are some good things. For community banks, the change of control piece of things is important. Certainly the non-disclosure, but again, there's a long way to go on some of the more technical things like the clawback piece of things. Garden leave, if you resign from an organization, they might want to pay you, for the 45-day notice. They might not be able to do that. So there's still a ways to go on this one.
Okay, I'll take that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Senator von Walkenberg, you want to finish up?
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I appreciate the throwing everything at the wall approach to this, but why would we need to explicitly put clawbacks in here when they can explicitly put it in their own contracts? I appreciate that we specifically brought up California, but we didn't bring up Oklahoma and North Dakota, known liberal bastions. Third, if it was a level playing field, why would wages go up, job mobility go up, and entrepreneurship go up when they're banned? And last, why would we need to renew them if they're only 1 year? Okay, so while I appreciate the throwing everything at the wall approach, we know this works. We've seen it in other states. I would ask that you move it forward.
Got a motion to report and a second. Are there other motions? If not, please open the roll.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Okay, the bill reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Next on the list is Senator Hashmi, and you've got Senate Bill 230. Senator Hashmi here? She's here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. SB 230 is an effort to ensure that we have I can't speak, it's late at night, resilience, as well as competition, competitiveness, and affordability in our energy distribution, and that we are working to empower our customers as well so that they have opportunities to participate in lower cost. So SB 230 seeks to expand third-party ownership, allowing available and qualified and cost-competitive PPAs to compete to be a part of Virginia's energy mix. And this is designed to help to spur private investment, reducing the burden on utilities in our energy transition, and ultimately then lower our electric cost. And because we're expanding to third-party ownership, we've got language in this bill to ensure that our utilities are held, Phase 1 and Phase 2 utilities are held harmless in that case that the power purchase agreement doesn't deliver in the contracted energy capacity or in the recs that have been outlined.
Is there a substitute for this bill?
My apologies, there is a substitute, yes.
But all in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. Aye. Okay, the substitute's properly before the committee. I'm sorry, Senator Hashmi, I don't know if this changes anything about your presentation.
It doesn't, actually. I was speaking to the substitute. And the substitute has been worked on by many of our stakeholders. There is probably still not full agreement on the substitute, but I think we're getting closer to understanding each other in regard to the language here. So again, this is focusing on making sure that there is reliability and affordability in our grid, as well as resilience. And so expanding to third-party ownership allows for more people, more entities to compete and create more competition in the system. So distributed generation technologies like rooftop solar, community solar, and battery storage strengthen the grid, making it less vulnerable to a single point of failure. And this provision also gives Virginians a role to play in the energy transition that we are making through the VCEA and improves our grid resilience and reliability. So increasing the carve-out for these smaller scale projects also alleviates some of the growing divide that we see sometimes that are related to utility scale solar. So the bill is focused on those elements. There are people who are here to speak to some of the technical concerns as the committee wishes, but that is the essence of the bill.
Okay, are there questions for Senator Hashmi? Okay, 3 minutes aside, people that are for this bill, if they want to explain things, please come forward.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Senator Hashmi did a great job of explaining the provisions in this bill. As we looked back on kind of the discussion around the clean energy transition over the last couple of years, we noticed that there was a lot of discussion or criticism related to reliability of the grid and also affordability. So we tried to proactively think through some of those provisions and put those before you. We've expanded the DG carve-out for the reasons explained by Senator Hashmi. We've also allowed additional space for third-party developers to play a role and expanded the energy storage target. I think folks online will talk a little bit more to the effects of those provisions.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Thank you to the Senator for bringing this bill. Our past couple of cases and Dominion and APCO's annual RPS filings have shown that PPA projects can often be lower cost and lower risk for ratepayers. In fact, our expert in this past proceeding, Greg Abbott, the former deputy director of the SCC's Division on Public Utility Regulation, actually found in this most recent case that there were 8 PPAs totaling 125 megawatts of generation that were skipped over, even though they were lower cost than the company-owned projects. This bill would fix that. In addition, Ms. Germain mentioned the increase in storage. In the substitute before you, the storage increase actually allows Dominion to build over 1,000 megawatts more of storage than current law allows, really getting to that reliability piece. So we would ask that you support the bill.
Senator Sorville, do you have something now or you want to wait till after it's done? Okay. Next, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Peter Anderson with Appalachian Voices. We just associate ourselves with the comments of Southern Environmental Law Center, and we do support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Morris, Appalachian Power. APCO is neutral on the bill. We have some questions on the substitute as it relates to battery storage, but we appreciate the patrons' willingness to work in a stakeholder process, and we look forward to continuing to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Glenn Bessa speaking as a private citizen. I'm here to say this is very important legislation because it's all about addressing climate change. And I have to point out that Dominion Energy right now proposes to double its greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, their IRP calls for going from 17 million metric tons to 38 million metric tons by 2048. That's not consistent with the Clean Economy Act. We need to make this bill stronger, this law stronger, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Are you for the bill?
I am for the bill.
Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We thank the senator for bringing the bill, and specifically because we are fuel agnostic, we are very thankful for the addition and the substitute of the final line. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We've got one person online, two people online, and we're out of time, so I'd ask you just to identify yourself. Tell us if you represent a group and whether you're for or against the legislation.
He's the best witness ever.
Okay.
Devin Welch, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Devin Welch. I'm speaking on behalf of SunTribe Solar. We'll be brief. We support Senate Bill 230. We see it as necessary for the continued growth of distributed generation in Virginia. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Okay, are there people that have another view?
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy. We rise in opposition to the bill because it makes significant changes to the Virginia Clean Economy Act, and our concerns are centered around feasibility and affordability. I'll cover a couple of provisions that are of concern to us. One is that it triples the requirements around one of the potentially more costly provisions associated with distributed solar. And it allows the state corporation only commission one option, and that is to raise those targets. It does not allow them to lower the target if the cost grows or if that becomes infeasible. Changes that we suggested that would allow more projects to qualify for this provision were rejected by the proponents. It also increases the proportion of non-utility generation. Of the non-utility generation projects selected thus far through a competitive procurement process and approved by the State Corporation Commission, more than 40% of them have actually either been canceled or are more than 18 months behind schedule. It also includes a utility prohibition on participation in many of the energy storage projects. Other key suggestions that were rejected were those that would correct a double counting provision that allows renewable energy certificates by unregulated entities to be counted twice, and measures related to reliability and grid security. So in short, we cannot support a bill that ignores the realities of what it takes to keep the lights on, forces an increased reliance on third-party projects that thus far have failed to deliver as promised, and without direct benefit to our customers. It also allows a continuation of double counting of renewable energy certificates to those who are purchasing them from out of states and mostly from decades-old resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others? Okay, Senator Hatch, do you want to finish up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As presented, this really is an opportunity to continue to expand customer access to energy sources that are delivered, focused on meeting those VCEA goals. This allows for greater participation of third-party participants in the process, making sure that we are focused on competitive processes to bring lower cost, increase affordability and resilience in the grid. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of our utilities and other stakeholders.
Okay, Senator Survell, I forgot about you. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have a motion, but I just want to preface it by saying that, first of all, appreciate the fact this bill, I think it's narrower than the bill that was introduced before. The bill that had the prior version of the bill affected sort of what the public interest definition is and a few other things. But This bill to me is, this committee in some ways drives me nuts because we make multi-million, billion-dollar decisions in 10-minute hearings without a lot of studies or thought or careful work. And that was the entire reason we set up the Commission on Utility Regulation and gave it 6 staff, was it so we were going to be diving into bills that are moving around. In this bill, I think, increases the amount of private participation in our power network by about 10%. In Virginia, we spend something like $25 or $30 billion on power, which means if we're switching 10% from incumbent utility power to private, that means we're potentially moving maybe $3 or $4 billion from the monopoly over to procured power. And it just seems to me that if we're making decisions that are that large, they ought to be done with a lot more study and thought and care, which is the whole reason we set up the CUR. I would also just note that the bill also gets into energy storage, which is the bill that I carried back in 2020 as part of the VCA debate. And at the time, when I carried it 3 years ago, there was no proven energy storage technology that anybody even knew how we were going to meet the demand. It's not even clear to me that the technology has evolved to the point where we're safe sort of mandating an additional, it looks like 1,300 megawatts of additional energy storage. It's just not clear to me the market's even matured to that point. So it just, there's no question, I think, that the VCA probably could use some tweaks, but so much time and energy went into it, it just seems to me we need to be a little more careful about delving into it, and that's the whole reason we set the CEUR up with staff. And so having said that, it seems to me the appropriate thing to do is to carry this over for a year, hopefully we'll have staff soon, and have them look at it over the 12 months and then address these issues at that point once we've had more time to consider it and we make these big multi-10 million, $100 million, billion-dollar decisions. That's my motion.
Second. We've got a motion and a second on other motions. And open the roll. Carry over to refer to the sewer. Cure, whatever you want to call it. Cure.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, that bill's carried over and referred to sewer.
Not to sewer, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I apologize. It's 485, 500, 660, 685. Do you have any particular order you want to take these bills up in?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Well, we can do the easiest one first. Senate Bill 485. I'll take the advice of Senator McPike, and I will carry this over to 2025.
Senate Bill 485. Senator Carol Foy's asked that the bill be carried over to 2025. Okay, is there a second? Are there other motions? Please open the roll. Okay, Senator Serville's gone, huh? Okay, so 485 is carried over.
Ayes 14, no 0.
What's next?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We'll take Senate Bill 660, PBM transparency.
Okay, is there a substitute?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there's a substitute.
Do I have a motion on the substitute?
A line amendment, Mr. Chairman.
There are line amendments on this bill. You want to report the line amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Senator Carol Foy, members of the committee. The line amendments for Senate Bill 660. The first is on line 117 after section, strike shall and insert may. And then the second is to strike the clause numbered number 6 on line 136, which reads, the pharmacy benefit manager's retained rebate percentage for each health benefit plan. And then the remainder of the line amendments fix the subsequent numbering. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion on that amendment, those amendments? Move the amendments, okay. All in favor of the amendments, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, Senator Carol Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The issue is that pharmacy benefit managers, known as PBMs, are middlemen in the prescription drug market that sit between drug manufacturers and pharmacies. They are companies that manage prescription drug insurance benefits on contract with health insurers, Medicare, Part D drug plans, large employers, and other payers. Over time, PBMs have developed considerable market power of their own, with 3 corporations controlling 79% of the market and vertical integration, so that many PBMs have financial interests tied to particular pharmacies. Although PBMs operate in the shadows with little information available to patients, their functions directly shape costs and access to medications. PBMs often have profit incentives that may conflict with the interests of patients and the overall health system. For example, they have an incentive to favor high-priced drugs over drugs that are more cost-effective because they often receive rebates that are calculated as a percentage of the manufacturer's list price. It makes sense for Virginia to join other states in requiring fuller transparency from PBMs with complete reporting on where drug rebates and administrative fees. This bill is about transparency. It would expand upon existing reporting requirements for PBMs already in code and provide the Commonwealth with greater insight into rebate data. PBMs already provide some data, and this would simply expand that scope in line with 18 other bipartisan states. And I also have experts here to answer any questions.
Well, can I ask you first? There's a bill in the other body that had some amendments. Are these amendments that we adopted identical to the ones that were adopted in the House? Do we know?
Yes.
They are? Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Senator Carol Foy? Okay, people that are for this legislation, you've got 3 minutes.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. Senator explained it very well. This bill is about transparency, improving transparency. We want to make sure that the rebates that are intended to be passed along to consumers are actually making it to consumers. This will help us learn more, find more information, and ensure that those savings are being passed along. Thank you.
Good evening. Rena Hicks with Freedom Virginia, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there others that are for this legislation? Or is there anybody online? Okay, are there people that have another view? People that are opposed to this legislation? Are there people online? Okay, the bill's before, do you want to finish up?
Nothing else to add.
Okay, the bill's before the committee. Move to report. Is there a second on that? Are there further motions? If not, please open the roll.
Somebody's got a proxy.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, congratulations. You want to continue to take your chances, I guess.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, let's roll the dice.
Okay.
Senate Bill 500, Grid Enhancing Technologies. So the demand for electricity is increasing. PJM, the entity which controls the Mid-Atlantic grid, projects Virginia's energy demand will sharply grow around 5% annually over the next 15 years. And absent action, the growth will increase congestion on the grid and costs for ratepayers. A recent report from Grid Strategies found that in 2022, total congestion costs reached $20.8 billion nationwide, with the key driver of these costs being insufficient transmission expansion to keep up with the growth of low-cost renewable energy projects. We need a more resilient grid. New clean energy sources face delays in coming online, and building new transmission takes time. That's why we're bringing forth this bill. What this bill does is say that for utilities in Virginia, they have to demonstrate that they have considered both grid-enhancing sensors and advanced reconductoring in their integrated resource planning and certain applications for new transmission. So grid-enhancing technologies, what is that? Those are sensors, pretty much, that give real-time updates about transmission capacity, ambient temperature, line sagging, congestion, and allows responsive management. No. I don't think so. Okay. No, there's no
substitute.
substitute.
Okay.
So grid enhancing technologies, what they do is a low-cost way to ensure that we are optimizing our grid as much as possible. These are things that a lot of utilities and energy companies are doing currently. It will also say that they have to do advanced reconductoring, which is a process of temporarily removing power lines and replacing them with new highly conductive alloys, which will be a great way to ensure that we are being as efficient as possible. So I can answer any questions and have experts that can answer any questions of the committee.
Okay, does anyone have questions for Senator Carol Foy? Senator Servell, is that you poised to ask a question or?
Not yet. No, not to ask a question.
No questions. Okay, are there people? Senator Eben.
Yes, so the grid enhancing technologies, is it true that there are renewable energy projects currently waiting in the interconnection queue that this would unleash? Maybe one of your experts would know.
Let's see. Yes.
I'm kind of curious how much energy is waiting to be unleashed if we were to adopt these technologies?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Senator, it's in Kansas and Oklahoma where those GETs have been studied at kind of a medium penetration level. What they found is that those technologies allow the grid to integrate about twice as many new energy projects.
Thank you.
Okay, is that any more questions, Senator Eben?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Morris?
As I understand the bill, Senator Carol Foy, is that if you're going to, before you consider adding a line, on the existing line, you want the upgrades to the more enhanced, modern working technology, and that's pretty much it?
That's pretty much it. It says that you have to consider, is there a more cost-effective way to address whatever the issue is, instead of just tearing down and rebuilding.
Thank you.
Where we, 3 minutes for people that are for this legislation and 3 minutes for people that are against. So come forward. Have we done this? Did we do this last week on this bill? Okay. Well, then the committee just has to decide, unless there's something new.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, one of the things this bill purports to do is to amend this statute on integrated resource plans and to require additional language in the IRPs about this kind of technology. And one of the things that at least I discovered when I was talking about with the utilities about IRPs last year is that the IRP process has become a complete mess because of all the different things that have been layered onto it over the last years. And I think just last week, the SCC actually deadlocked on the approval of an IRP on a 1-1 vote. They couldn't even approve one because it's become such a mess. And one of the things I know that the CEUR was going to look at over the next 12 months was how to redo the IRP process to make it make more sense in light of everything we've done in the last 5 years. I'd hoped to have started that process by now, but the House of Delegates killed that part of the bill last year on the CEUR bill. But just it strikes me the IRP process is screaming for reform instead of adding things onto it. And so it seems to me that if the CEUR is going to be looking at that over the next 12 months, this is another thing that ought to be looked at there.
Was that a motion?
Sounds like it, sure.
Carried over and referred to the CEUR?
Right.
Not the sewer, but the CEUR.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
The cure.
Is there a second on that?
Cure.
Okay. Are there other motions?
We haven't taken testimony yet, so that's why I was waiting on.
Okay. Are there other motions? If not, please open the roll. Okay, Senator Carol Foy, the bill's carried over and it's gone to the CEUR.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Last bill is Senate Bill 685, Warehouse Worker Protection.
685. Turn your attention to Senator Carol Foy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. There is an obsession of speed over safety, and right now, large warehouses run by billion-dollar companies have seen a huge surge in online orders since the COVID-19 pandemic. While these companies make billions in profits, they abuse their employees through secret and unreasonable quotas in their warehouses. There's been a study that says workers are judged by quotas and performance metrics that are not disclosed to them, forcing them to work against an invisible clock every day. In turn, workers feel the pressure to meet this quota, risking their health and safety in order to not lose their job, creating a culture of fear in the workplace. Many of you may have heard of these instances of some workers wearing diapers to keep from going to the bathroom to try to meet the performance quotas that they're not even informed of or that it's disclosed. So what does this bill do? This bill does several things. First, it says that if you have performance quotas, you have to inform your workers in writing so they're aware of the standards that they have to meet. This bill also says that if you do not pay your workers overtime that they're owed or pay the minimum wage they should get, it changes the remedies that's available to include trouble damages. So one of the challenges is that when people aren't paid minimum wage or overtime that they're owed, it's hard for them to get an attorney to represent them because it's not profitable. And so what trouble damages does is allows and permits and incentivizes attorneys to represent them so they can recover the money that wasn't paid from them by their employer. That's pretty much what the bill does. And it also says that you cannot take adverse action against a warehouse worker for them using the bathroom.
Okay, does anybody on the committee have questions for Senator Carol Foy? If not, 3 minutes aside. People that are for the bill, come on up. Going once. Going twice. Anybody that's for the bill, come on up. Senator Carol Foy, where are they?
They're working.
They're working. They're working. That's the problem. They just got to work all the time.
They don't get bathroom breaks, Mr. Chairman. They can't come down here to speak on this bill.
Okay, so we got the silk stocking lawyers that are against it, huh? Okay. Please come forward if you're opposed to this bill. Look at this. Look at this, man. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nicole Brunner with Reed Smith on behalf of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. This bill does two things. It has warehouse provisions and minimum wage and overtime provisions. In 2021, during the virtual session, you created the Virginia Overtime Wage Act. At the time, you were told that created a state-level cause of action, but otherwise aligned with the Fair Labor Standards Act. We found out afterwards that was not the case. And there was, as a result, there were several lawsuits that are still ongoing. In 2022, every member of this committee at the time supported Senator Barkert's efforts to bring Virginia back in line with the Fair Labor Standards Act, but to retain the state-level cause of action. The legislation before you again takes Virginia out of line with the Fair Labor Standards Act and creates additional issues. By striking the language on lines 212 through 217, we are again left with ambiguity on all of the elements with which Virginia aligns with the FLSA, including how overtime or work week is calculated. These are in addition to the increased damages, interest, and statute of limitations, which would also be out of line with the FLSA. Further, we would oppose the warehouse provisions of this statute. Virginia has made itself a leader in competing for and welcoming supply chain business investments. This legislation works squarely against that and creates a one-size-fits-all for warehouse.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is David White. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Maritime Association. I happen to also serve on the Advisory Committee for National Trade of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and I also serve as the Chairman of the Virginia Freight Advisory Committee. However, my remarks are solely on behalf of the Virginia Maritime Association. I do not need to tell you what an economic driver is, the Port of Virginia is to the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the broader economic impacts of the maritime industry and the supply chains. This bill singles out warehousing, an essential component of port growth and our supply chains, for special treatment that would undermine our port economic development. efforts and the Commonwealth's investments in our port and supply chains. This bill will harm our competitiveness against other ports and states. Therefore, with respect to the patron, the Virginia Maritime Association must ask you to vote against SB 685.
Okay, thank you. You have about 40 seconds left for the rest of you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kyle Shreve on behalf of the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation as well as the Virginia Forestry Association. We specifically oppose the changes to minimum wage and overtime. This is something that our farmers do not have HR departments the way other businesses do. And having changed this now twice in the past 3 years, we're looking at changing it again, and we oppose.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Mr. Chairman, Phil Boykin with the Virginia Beer Wholesalers Association. I'm here in my beer socks, not silk stockings. I do want to thank the patron, though, for trying to work with us on some things, but ultimately we couldn't get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Trip Perrin representing the Virginia Wine Wholesalers Association. We also thank the patron for working us. We just ran out of time and can't get there and oppose the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just very quickly, please.
Kate Baker on behalf of Virginia Retail Federation. We also oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Ken Hutchison on behalf of Anheuser-Busch, reflecting the concerns of our beer wholesaler partners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Stacey Gore with the Virginia Manufacturers Association. We also oppose the bill. Thank you.
Clearly, this is a well-liked, well-loved bill, and so I hope that the votes can reflect that. Mr. Chairman, at the end of the day, it's really about protecting our warehouse workers. We have bills in place not for people who are doing what they're supposed to do, who don't have to worry about repercussions, but it's really to catch the bad actors. So if people who aren't paying their workers minimum wage or not paying them the overtime that they're owed, yes, there should be consequences, there should be penalties, and there should be redress, and that's what this bill does. Also, doing common sense things like saying you can't fire someone for using the bathroom. If you have performance quotas, you have to inform the worker. These are things that you think you would not have to explain or make clear in the law, but clearly you do. And so it's my ask that you report this bill.
Okay, thank you very much. The committee operates on motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Eben.
Yeah, I think Senator Carol Foy brings up some serious issues, but I'm not sure that we're ready to adopt them all. And I'm wondering if we might want to carry this over and refer it to the Department of Labor and Industry for a work group to report back to us after talking with both management and with labor.
What's your suggestion is we carry it over and write a letter to the Department of Labor and Industry and ask them to take a look at these issues and to report back to us by some November or December of this year? Is that
by November 1st? I would think would be a good.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
I second. Okay. Are there other motions? If not, the motion is to carry over. Open the roll, please.
Good idea.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Carol
Thank you,
Foy.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
Okay. We're now at 7:17 p.m. We've gone through a bunch of bills. We're only going to finish the bills that were put in by non-members of this committee today. So Senator Subramanian is next with two bills. Then we've got a bill from Senator Stewart, or Senator Sudline and Senator Stewart. Okay, Stewart is going to be next week then. Okay, Senator, yes, sir. Just
Thank you, Mr.
which
Chair.
bill do you want to go first?
We'll start with SB 191.
SB 191, please turn your attention to the senator.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a substitute.
Okay, there's a substitute for 191. Is there a motion to adopt the substitute?
So a line amendment, yeah.
A motion to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an amendment. Okay, we've adopted an.
So the bill is only two paragraphs.
I appreciate everybody having to leave, but I would also appreciate if you'd be quietly when you do it, so we can finish this thing out. Okay, 191 was a line amendment, not a substitute, but we've adopted it anyway. So turn your attention to Senator Subramanian.
Yeah, thank you. So, the problem we're trying to solve here is, we probably heard about this, we probably talked about this in the context of other legislation. The electricity demand from data centers is going to grow exponentially. One projection said that it might double the average household's energy bill by 2035. We're just trying to empower the State Corporation Commission to examine and adjust the formula for cost allocation to protect consumers from unreasonable costs related to some of this growth. And the substitute essentially just tries to make sure that this is not to be construed as indicating that lowest cost replaces all other criteria. We still want to cite generation and transmission lines in a manner consistent with the public interest, and make sure that the policy set forward utilizes the provisions of the VCA when it comes to RPS. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there's some people here to speak in favor of the bill, but we're trying to figure out a way to empower the SEC to be able to look out for customers.
And what we've tried to do, be consistent, treat everybody the same way.
Yep.
These data center bills, for the most part, we've carried them over because of the JLARC study.
Sure.
Is there any reason to treat this one differently?
I think some folks wanted to speak in
they-
favor of the bill as well, too, if we might give them a chance.
If there are people, if they want to tell us why we should treat this one differently.
We'll give them a chance.
Okay. We got 3 minutes then for people that want to speak to the bill.
Julie Bolthouse with Piedmont Environmental Council. You cannot delay this bill. You've got $4 billion worth of transmission line projects going on right now, already approved by PJM, moving through the SCC process. $4 billion worth. You've got another $100 million, at least in the pipeline of transmission lines that are solely going to serve data center customers in Culpeper County, Prince William County, Loudoun County, Henrico County, all over the place. We are subsidizing this industry. In October, there was a notice in the newspaper that went out on the 2023 IRP that shows a 100% increase to the residential rate. We have to address this now. We should not be subsidizing this industry for another minute, let alone another year. Thank you.
My name is Elena Schlossberg. I'm with the Coalition to Protect Prince William County. I appreciate your concerns about climate change. I appreciate your concerns about, what residents are getting out, what they have to pay for drugs. But the reality is that this is the biggest tax increase that's going to happen to residents throughout the state. I've been coming here for almost 10 years on this particular subject, which is data centers subsidized by citizens. I'm going to read you. You don't need to study this. The SCC legal staff has already told everyone. This is from the Haymarket transmission line case from 2016. One way to ensure that the prospective developers of large block loads who request service that can only be provided through development and construction of the transmission lines to bear the cost of such construction is through the application of line extension policy. Thus, in viewing the line extensions to large contingent loads, the Commission may wish to require the customer, that is the Amazons, that is the QTS, to put some of its own skin in the game. Otherwise, the general public, already burdened by the environmental and aesthetic impacts of otherwise unneeded transmission projects, is also not burdened with 100% of the unnecessary costs enough.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Lillian Anderson with Virginia Conservation Network, and we also support this bill.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Thanks to the patron. We've heard about the significant costs associated with data centers, so we think it's a good idea to take a holistic look at generation, transmission, distribution, and find out how to accomplish that at the lowest cost.
Isn't that precisely what JLARC's doing?
And I think there's also the second section, a commission proceeding, looking at the cost allocation. I know there's a similar element in the JLARC study, but I think having a commission proceeding, sort of building on those findings, would be important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Glenn Bessel speaking as a private citizen. I'll just ask one question, perhaps of the people who follow here. As a person who pays about 10 cents per kilowatt hour, ask them what they pay per kilowatt hour. I think it's around 4 cents. Okay, so it's not just the capital cost, it's also the actual cost of electricity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Holmes, Clean Virginia. We also support the bill and would argue that there's no reason to delay this conversation with the SEC. We don't need a study to send this to them for their consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do you want Senator Subramanian Supra? I apologize. I've got such a hard time with your name.
It rhymes with onion, so it's Subramaniam. Yeah, rhymes with onion.
Okay. Subramanian.
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
Okay. Would you like to finish up?
No.
Okay. The bill's before the committee, and we operate by motion. The bill's before the committee. We operate by motion.
Continue. Substitute motion.
Substitute motion.
Carry bill over.
Got a substitute motion to carry it over in light of the JLARC study. Second. Is there a second? There's a second on that. Substitute motion takes precedence. Carry over. Okay, that's what we're voting on. Please open the roll.
That's 15-0.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, now you've got Senate Bill 346.
Thank you. SB 346. And so we heard some of the testimony from this last week. Decided to try to see if we can find some sort of solution between all the stakeholders. I think we basically, first I'd like, there is a substitute, so if everyone has that, thank you.
Got a substitute and a motion and a second. And all in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the substitute's properly before the committee. If you want to explain.
Please.
So just as a reminder, so essentially what the problem we're trying to solve here is that there's, over the past couple of years, a lot of solar projects have been held up because the costs for interconnection have increased, sometimes 10x or more, and there's been delays as well in trying to get these projects up and running and connected to the grid. And so what we're trying to do is just figure out, right now the SEC is going through a proceeding to try to resolve the issue. I think a lot of their final rulemaking will come out next year. But this is essentially, what do we do for the next year? Do we let all these solar projects out there die? Think about, there's, 800 plus jobs, about 70 million amount in local spending. Lots of projects are trying to figure out what to do over the next year while they wait for the SEC's final proceedings. And so we mostly return to the code. There's no more penalties in this substitute. We accepted a lot of the language that different stakeholders in the utilities wanted us to do. I think the kind of issue, there's no penalties for delays at all or enforcement of any sort. There's a sunset with an SEC final order for July 1st, 2025. Still cost recovery language, but the big thing, I think the place where we didn't quite get there at this point was cost sharing. Essentially, the difference was between 250 kilowatts and 750 kilowatt projects. At what point are we going to do a 50-50 cost share on projects? This substitute says you do 50-50 cost share above 750, and so I think the issue there is a lot of our projects are above 250. And so if you do it down at 250, you're still hurting a lot of projects that are outstanding, that are delayed. And we wanted a bill that would essentially try to get these projects going, not kill solar projects in the short term across the state. And so we want to be hopeful. And I think this substitute is helpful while still trying to address the needs of some of the concerns that were originally stated. So we did our best, Mr. Chair.
Sharing?
There is cost sharing.
There is cost sharing.
Yes. So it's starting at 750. Okay. Want to get up?
Where is that?
Mr. Chair, what line?
Mr. Chairman, that's on line 960.
So what we're faced with right now is interim parameters that start at $300,000 when we were used to $5,000 to $50,000 to interconnect projects of these size. So we sat down and did the math of at what size the projects could absorb $300,000 or more and still survive, and that's how we came up to the 750 line. And again, this is a super weedy, deep in the industry issue, which is why we just are asking for a year of a lifeline, why the SCC sorts this out.
So 750 is basically industrial size.
It's still
project.
rooftop. It's commercial rooftop.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal, then Senator Servell.
But just to be clear, this is rooftop for an individual customer that now we're shifting the cost of that connectivity to all the ratepayers, including our constituents.
That's part of the disagreement. I don't believe that we're cost shifting to the ratepayers for the benefit of a single project. If I could clarify, what's being asked for is grid upgrades. So it used to be that I had to pay for a meter, and then it was I had to pay for lines, and then it was I had to pay for a transformer to be upgraded, and then it was new poles and new transformers, and now they're asking me to upgrade the substations for a single customer, which we believe is a grid upgrade. So the ratepayers will only have to pay for that if they prove that it was prudent and necessary through an SCC process.
Okay, Senator Servell's got a question.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I'm trying to understand, I don't know whether the patron can answer it or the SCC can answer it over there, but there's pending litigation over this right now at the SCC. And I thought I read that the SCC had rejected Dominion's proposed solution or something like that in November or something. And so I assume there's litigation ongoing. And am I to understand that this bill is not intended to affect whatever the SCC ultimately decides? It's to put some kind of interim solution in place until the SCC decides what the right policy is? Is that, I mean, if that's the case, I need somebody to explain to me how this works in the enactment clause, because Mr. Chairman, you asked everybody to submit their subs before today to us so we'd have a chance to read these things. So we're not doing it by fly right here, and I haven't seen this until like a minute ago.
Committee members, my name is Tony Smith with Secure Futures and Distributed Solar Alliance. In answer to your question, Senator Servell, what this bill does is buy time until July 1st, 2025, by which time the SEC could have an evidentiary process and issue a final order. What we're asking for is for the SEC to have the time to adjudicate this, but in the meantime, to help save the industry and to help customers save over $40 million in avoided energy costs. These are public school districts that really need these savings. And we need the jobs.
Mr. Chairman, I heard Senator Subramanian say that a minute ago. What I'm looking for is what sentences in the bill do that. I'm a lawyer, and that's what I need to read.
It's in the, what line is it in?
There's an enactment clause that requires the SEC to undergo a proceeding when they hit 3%. That's in there, and I can find it really quickly. And we added a specific name to it, so it would be very clear what it is. It's called the Net Energy Metering Proceeding. And then the last three paragraphs is where it says that it will sunset pending the decision. Sorry.
1115.
Right. So we're talking 1104 to 1116. That's what that's supposed to do, I guess.
Okay. I guess that's the problem. When we needed a substitute on Friday, we got it at 11 o'clock today.
Mr. Chair, I think I sent it on Saturday, Friday night. It's the same substitute I sent on Friday night.
You get it?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman. Senator Morrison.
Okay. On certain projects, would the distributor who is going to upgrade the substation, would they be able to recover costs on that, or would that just be on their dime?
What the language says is they could recover costs if they can prove that it was prudent and necessary through the SEC process.
If the SEC
Yep.
makes that determination?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Are there other people that need to speak in favor of this legislation?
Mr.
Senator Servell's got something.
I'm sorry, maybe there's a question for Tom. Tom, I'm reading the enactment clauses 2, 3, and 4, right? And if it does what the patron, his interpretation of the law says it does, it means that I guess there's 1 or 2 or 3, 4, 5 projects or something like that that might get done in the next year or something like that, and then the SCC will figure this out later. What I don't understand is the way these enactment clauses are worded. It says that the provisions of the Act can be modified in terms of application to a Phase 1 utility. I mean, I've never heard of the SCC being able to change the law. And so I'm trying to understand how this bill, as it's written, allows the SCC to either rewrite the law, or it doesn't say that they get to ignore paragraph whatever after a certain date. I mean, I'm trying to understand this works as a law. What being suggested makes sense because it allows some projects to proceed and share some costs and buy time. But the way this is written, it doesn't seem to really work that way to me, the way I read it. And that's what I'm trying to understand, Mr. Stevens. Maybe you can clarify how this would be applied in a year or two.
Mr. Chair, Senator Serval, I'm not sure that I can clarify the enactments say that the commission, the provisions of the act may be modified in terms of a Phase 1 and the third enactment, Phase 2, and the fourth enactment following the net energy metering proceeding. So, no, there's no more specifics than that, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Senator Deeds.
Senator
I like the proposal that Senator Subramanian verbalized. I just don't think this language does that. So I'm not really sure what to do with that at this point. But I would just
Senator McPike.
If we're going to be here next week, I guess we could do that.
Take a battle next week. Is that
The third time, I guess. Yeah.
Senator, well, this has been
If the committee is okay with what he verbalized as the concept, but I'm not sure whether the votes are there for that or not because we just got it. But Mr. Chairman. So.
Well, I sense that there may be some comfort with your idea, but there's not been enough time to really digest all the language. So you might want to take it back for a week.
So moved.
Okay. Move to go back for the week. Any all in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Okay, opposed? Okay, the bill will go by for a week. Senator Suter, that's your Senator Suterline then has a bill. And a couple of committee members have said they've got easy bills. We're going to take their word for it. And so we're going to take up Senator Pike and Senator Bagby after this. Senator Suterline, please turn your attention to Senator Suterline. It's bill number 688.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 688 seeks to prevent ratepayers being on the hook for what's anticipated to be a very expensive federal auction for offshore wind leases that we anticipate will be coming up this year. So you either will like this bill this year or you won't. It won't be relevant next year, is what's anticipated. And it seeks to prevent cost recovery beyond $16 million for the leases. This will still allow the utility to compete to secure the lease area.
How'd you come up with the $16 million figure?
They previously spent 1.6, so multiplied it by 10.
Well,
I'd be happy to not have any, but
well, the current leasehold is $9 million. Is that right?
My understanding was the last lease was 1.6, but if I'm happy to talk about numbers, I don't anticipate that's going to be where the issue is, though. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. So it would still allow the utility to compete for it, but it would ensure that it's the shareholders, not the ratepayers, the captive ratepayers that would be forced to pay for these very expensive leases. There's several private companies that are also interested in the leases, and I believe that the Commonwealth should let the utility know beforehand that we don't intend to allow them to spend potentially hundreds of millions of dollars on the lease and subject that to ratepayers before they've actually developed, permitted, financed, or constructed the project. That's the bill.
People that are in favor of the bill?
You got questions?
Come on up and speak in favor of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Suderline, one quick question. So I noticed this we're going after the public utilities. Does this also apply to the private utilities?
When you say the private utilities, what do you mean?
Let's say like right now on the wind project, we have Dominion doing one. Does this also apply to if Avangrid were to move forward and do one?
No, it says right there on the second page, specifically addresses the utility. But if you'd like to change that, again, I'm not sure it would be relevant to it.
I just want to know the impact on current offshore wind projects.
I think that would be a great question if the bill doesn't pass, to ask the SEC what the cost of this will be. Under the legislation that we passed, I believe last year, that allows the SEC to review legislation.
Okay, 3 minutes aside. People that are for this legislation, please come forward.
Let me take this out of your way.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Ken Hutchison on behalf of Avangrid Renewables. This bill is intended to raise public awareness about a very serious potential financial impact to ratepayers. Just some numbers for you very quickly. In 2013, the lease area price was about $14 an acre. Fast forward 10 years, when you average the last 4 lease auction prices, you're looking at about $5,200 per acre. There are 178,000 acres in the central Atlantic lease area. That auction will take place sometime this year, maybe early 25. So the potential impact for any bidder potentially is $900 million for acquisition of a new lease area for an offshore wind project. So fundamentally, there are, I think, 2 questions here that are appropriate for this committee to address. Number one, is $900 million something that potentially ratepayers should be forced to absorb in the next project? And 2, more fundamentally to the company I represent, is it appropriate for the Commonwealth of Virginia and its investor-owned utilities to compete with the private sector with an unlimited checkbook in federal waters in a bid in an auction process that's going to attract 5, maybe 10 private sector offshore wind developers with their own capital? Senator DeSteph, I would say that if you propose an amendment to make it apply to Avangrid, we'd be delighted with that. We have a lease area that we purchased in 2017 for $9 million. We've been unable to evolve the conversations with Dominion to bring that project ashore with them to fill out the Clean Economy Act. But right there, you've got a $9 million lease area. We're looking at potentially $900 million coming forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We obviously have concern over ratepayers with this. Obviously, $900 million versus, 9 or much cheaper when Dominion was actually had their first tranche of their lease. What I will say is that our concern is not just the cost, but is ongoing in terms of passing this on to ratepayers without if Dominion didn't even get the lease, just that cost ever continually going higher. We feel like we should be mindful of the ratepayer impacts and not pass this on to consumers. Thank you.
People online that want to speak in favor of this? I'm sorry, people have another view. They're opposed to this legislation.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray on behalf of Dominion Energy. If I can point in the introduced bill, lines 82 to 83 refer to an awardee of such an auction. As a practical matter, there's no way to impose a cap on any of the third-party bidders, because what they'll do is they'll build it into the PPA price. The Commission reviews every individual cost for a regulated project, and the Commission has a standard of cost being reasonable and prudent. There is no blank check. There's a 100-year standard of they look at each individual cost, see if it's reasonable or prudent. In a PPA, you get a per megawatt hour price, and that's all you get. You might say, well, that sounds great. The challenge of that in offshore wind is just since last session in Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, Maryland, and New Jersey, these third-party firms have essentially voided the PPAs or demanded to renegotiate at a much higher price. So you're buying essentially, you're buying what may seem like an attractive price in the front end, but then have the project go south or end up paying significantly higher as costs, as in the case of New Jersey. A regulated project that is underway now is on time and on budget, and we would ask that you let the current process and longstanding standard of reasonable and prudent cost work, and not get in the habit of saying, okay, if you buy a turbine deck for a gas facility or a nuclear facility, it can't cost more than X, or if you buy this, it can't cost more than Y. We have bid one time for an offshore wind lease. As the testimony indicated, we bid $1.6 million. The Commission, in their review of the CVAL project, found that was reasonable and prudent. We would respectfully ask you to oppose the bill as both setting a bad precedent and essentially boxing the utility out of any ability to compete with these third parties.
Okay, the bill's before. You want to finish up, Senator Sudan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the bill's pretty straightforward. I don't believe that captive ratepayers should be have to pay for this. I believe that the shareholders, if the company decides that this is the best approach, the shareholders should bear the burden.
Okay, the bill's before the committee, and we operate by motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to PBI.
A substitute motion?
To continue.
Makes no
Motion to carry over.
Continue.
And second that motion. Okay, all in favor of carrying the bill over, vote aye. That's a substitute motion. Okay, the bill is carried over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sudan. Okay, a couple of our members said they had bills where there's peace in the valley, they're easy bills, and Senator McPike, don't make me a liar.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try my best. I do have a substitute that I did email out over the weekend, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 248.
248.
And I'd move the adopted substitute.
Okay.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt substitute for Senate Bill 248. All in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. Okay, substitute's properly before the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may recall last year with a bill dealing and pertaining to jobbers and dealers in the Refiners Act. This is a much more narrowed provision, and working through with dealers and jobbers on language, we came to a consensus of much more narrowed provisions, affording basically an appraisal process when they're going through evaluation of leases. It also limits it only to Planning District 8, Mr. Chairman. And so it is a much more narrowed out agreement. You know, frankly, the appraisal is non-binding of either party, so it's really an information step in the process, Mr. Chairman. And so there are folks who have waited here that have worked together over several weeks to come to concurrence that are standing, and appreciate the committee's time with it.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, that was yesterday, though. So, yeah. Senator Morrison.
Question for the patron. Senator McPike, I have been advised that the cost of the leases for these facilities are the largest driver for the cost of gasoline in terms of the difference between one end of the street and another. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, what I'd say is, yes, there's been extreme rise in lease costs, and it's a part of what this is about, and trying to provide a framework where parties can exchange information to figure out what valuation is. There are some significant pressures on the gas stations, obviously, with different pressures with electrification and different things. So it's a means to get this move along and having some agreement. So,
okay, I think there is peace in the valley on this bill.
Move to report.
Well, now let's see if there are people that want to speak in favor of the bill.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bo Keeney representing the MOVE Chamber, which is a small business chamber in Northern Virginia. There is peace in the valley, so I will reserve my comments. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. But in respect to your time, there's peace in the valley, and
Does
we hope
anybody
you'll
have any
support it.
questions? And anybody else that wants to speak in favor of this bill?
Mr. Chairman and the members of the committee, thank you so much for your time. I understand we are already past
Just
18
identify yourself. Tell us where you live.
My name is Raheel Sheikh, and I also am associated with the MOVE Business Chamber. We are in support of the bill and looking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, anybody opposed to this bill? Okay, been a motion to report and a second. Are there other motions? Open the roll, please.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, Senator Bagby, you've got an easy bill too.
Yes, Mr. Chair, easier than the last one. Mr. Chair, as the members of the board step to the podium, I would just simply say that the bill simply makes two major changes.
Bill till 705, is that correct?
705, yes, sir.
Okay, is there a substitute or?
No. This bill simply makes two major changes to the Insurance Continuing Education Board by adding a member of the Virginia chapter of the National African American Insurance Association to the board, and amends the name of the existing member association from Virginia Association of Health Underwriters to the Virginia chapter of the National Association
Is there
of
anybody
Benefits
opposed to this bill?
and Insurance Professionals.
Move to report. Okay, been a motion to report. Has it been seconded? Okay, motion to report and a second. Are there other motions? Please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, thank you very much. And unless there's something else that's
Chairman,
burning a hole.
I got an easier one than that, Mr. Chairman. Take 10 seconds. Get the motion out, we can be on our way. Yeah, it's really easy.
It's not easy. I don't think that was easy.
You don't think this one easy? All right, you know what? We had a long day.
Okay, I would ask you again, we've got, what, 12 or 13 bills, 14 bills left. If you've got substitutes for the bills, get the substitutes to us by Friday. Okay, I want to be able to look at these bills over the weekend. I want every member to be able to look at the bills over the weekend. Senator Servo, you've got something?
I have a study nobody opposes. You want to knock that out?
I had a question to ask about that. Isn't that already contain an enactment clause for a bill we passed last year?
No. Okay. Let's talk about it next week, I guess.
We'll talk about it next week. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.